I can explain it later.
You can explain it later. Well, we're live now, so
Okay.
we're not going to explain it now because I think it's going to be.
Yeah, not gonna explain it now during the show.
That's
Right.
right.
We'll
I can
discuss
explain it
we'll
later.
discuss psychology and its impact on game design in another time.
Okay.
Yes.
It actually might be an interesting conversation.
That is
No, it
an
could
interesting conversation.
easily be an episode about game design and the way people think about things and how what people want is not always the same thing as what they feel they want.
Correct.
Mhm.
Really something that it's the part of game design that I needed to learn the most after joining Paizo. Like mathematical modeling I was ready for from my day job, but not as much like and it wasn't even just that there were mentors at Paizo who could teach me about it, which there to some extent were, but just like being in a position where I was at a company where I could do these giant play tests and have all this feedback from so many different people exposed me to the ability to ask questions and learn a lot about the way people thought.
So we have a whole bunch of new things because of Derek, because I was watching your stream.
Ooh.
We added the ability to join us now. And we have little emojis, little custom emojis.
Join us.
And one is of Mark and one is of me.
There you go.
Okay, there you have it.
So if you join us, you can get those crazy custom emojis.
Yeah, get your Roll for Combat loyalty badge and custom emojis.
Actually, the loyalty badge is pretty cool. The loyalty badge is pretty neat because they change colors.
What is the loyalty badge?
It's the icon. So we have our D20, but ours is on the side. And the D20 icon, it changes colors. In fact,
so it's like Twitch. If you've been a member for 1 month or 2 months or 3 months or 6 months or 12 months, you get a better
Yeah, if you look at our books, see that's the little D20. It's on the side. Like everyone does. It's funny. Everyone does D20s, and I looked at everyone's books, but no one does it on the side. So I was like, we will put ours on the side and be cooler because ours is rolling. And
We've got a side D20.
It's a little different.
Yeah, no, it's a good idea. You know, it's funny because the only reason I even turned that on, because like everybody who joined my YouTube channel is already a member of my Patreon. And I basically said, like, hey, listen, you should just join my Patreon. And everyone's like, Derek, we want custom emojis. And I said, I can't give you custom emojis unless I turn on this YouTube membership thing. And they said, well, then turn it on and we'll sign up. And I said, okay.
Well, we'll do custom, but then I don't know what people wanted, so I just threw some up, but I can get some better ones as people tell me what they like, and they tell us how they want. And we have this new thing, whenever we get to 50 likes during the show, our guest does something weird. So Derek, think of something weird.
Oh, we got plenty.
Well, last week it was just me and Mark, so I showed people how to make a dragon with their hands. Like
I did. You know what? I caught
he was there.
Hello. I saw that.
I caught the end of it, and then I tipped you guys.
Oh, right. Thank you. I know. Did you know how to do you impressing your friends and family with your dragon hands?
No, you know, my hands, these are
too
I was
meaty.
never meant to be a pianist. It was they're too.
My hands are meaty too, but I can still do. I think it's just all the years of bending that they've broken my fingers. So
you know, real quick, we were talking about the player psychology and player thought process.
Well, he loves it.
No, it reminded me of a really funny anecdote. You may have heard this before, which was told by Richard Garfield during the very early days of Magic the Gathering.
Yep.
And it just kind of goes to show you, and we can all appreciate this, right? Especially you know, you folks as rules designers. Is they were doing very early play testing of Magic the Gathering, including people who weren't necessarily quote unquote gamers. And Richard Garfield went around and he went to some a woman colleague of him and asked him, like, how are you liking your deck? And she goes, oh, it's really fun. It's really fun. I really like the card that lets me win automatically. And Richard Garfield like scratched his head. He's like, you know, trying to think of like, oh, you know, we knew Channel Fireball existed. Like, well, I tried to think of a card. He's like, can you show me the card? And she pulls out Time Walk. Which is, of course, a famous card, and it basically makes you take an extra turn. You know, you're trapped timely through time, but the rules text said your opponent loses next turn. And like at that moment, he had this realization of, okay, wow, this is going to be a lot harder than we thought, because when she read that, she thought, oh, and our opponent was thought, oh, when I play this card, you lose the game the next turn. Not that you lose, not your turn is skipped, but that you lose their turn. And so it's really interesting how people's perception is almost more important than what the reality of whatever it is that you're your rule or your engine or your system is really actually doing.
So I think our first membership ever is Cheese of Ages.
And of course it is. Cheese of Ages is like one of your top supporters.
He is.
They're always here. They are always in here like super chatting.
I know, they're great. And I put in a little alerts, but I guess I didn't do it right because it didn't come up.
It might be delayed. I don't know.
Okay. Yeah, I'm still figuring out the alert thing.
Dream Elements, I assume.
Yeah. Same thing. I was testing it. It looked good. Maybe I messed something up. But
anyways.
Yeah, I actually saw a lot of interesting. I used to go to GDC, Game Developers Conference, and he was fascinating. Here, I'll tell you another Richard Garfield story. So I was playing back in Alpha, Beta, and I had like Legends and Antiquities and all that. And I remember when we were playing then, everyone was super excited about Fallen Empires. And now remember, this is this is a little long story, but I'll try to cut it. Back then, what happened is there was so few prints of Magic that stores would order 20 boxes and get 2. Right. And then they'd order 40 boxes and get 4. So when it came to Fallen Empires, people ordering 80 boxes, but they actually printed enough this time, and they got 80. And what they did in Fallen Empires, and this is fascinating, is all the cards were good. None of them were great, and none of them were bad. They were all good. And because they were all good, it was the worst set ever in history because everything was average. And it was terrible. It almost killed the game, actually, because it was bought in massive quantities, and it was total garbage. And Richard Garfield learned that it was fascinating. It was an hour-long talk where he discussed like why you need to unbalance your game, make certain things really good and certain things really bad on purpose. And then even like you got to put in the Leviathans, you got to put in the huge 10 mana creatures that can break the game, even though those are quote crappy cards. But if that thing comes out, it's like instant win, and you need it in there because you need the highs and the lows. Right. And it is fascinating because I actually feel that's what happened to D&D 4th edition.
Interesting.
D&D 4th edition was so level and everyone was the same that people felt blah no matter what class they were playing, which is why you need the fighter to be really strong in some areas and really weak in others. And all the classes have to be really good in some things and really bad in others. Because if you
fortunately for a tabletop role-playing game, since it's not a collectible card game, you can still have a degree of balance by having strengths and weaknesses in different areas. Whereas if you have something that's just so homogeneous that everything feels the same, it like might happen in a card game, then you can have an issue.
Well, it's interesting that you say that though, Stephen, because one of the things that I've kind of thought about a lot is like when I think about like old D&D and I used to play it, the highs were higher for me. This is my personal opinion. The highs were higher, but the lows were a lot lower, right? Like I had a lot more game sessions that were a big bust, right? Like that you just walked away from that experience and you thought, I mean, case in point, I used to play Magic the Gathering semi-competitively, semi-pro. You'd sit down for the tournament, for the game of your life, and you'd draw your opening hand, and it would be nothing. And the game, you can mulligan, you get a new hand, and that hand sucks. Okay, game's over, right? Like there was like some percentage, I don't know what it was, maybe 10%, maybe 20% of Magic the Gathering games that essentially were non-games. They just didn't function. But it's like you accepted that failure rate because it allowed for these ultra high moments, right? These 8s, these 9s, these 10 out of 10s in your experience. But in my experience, getting a 10 out of 10 for, let's say you're designing a game, could be anything, role-playing game, video game, board game. Getting a 10 out of 10 is obviously a great mark to get. But getting a 10 out of 10 or an 8 out of 10 or a 7 out of 10 isn't what make people rage quit your game. Right? Giving them a 1 out of 10 or a 2 out of 10 or a 3 out of 10 is going to make them go, I played it once, it sucked, I'm never playing it again. And I feel like as a margin of safety, if you're designing a game, it makes sense to, I'm not saying it's a good idea, I'm just saying it makes sense to like try to eliminate 1s, 2s, and 3s, even if it means you give up 10s, 9s, and 8s, right? A push towards the middle, I think is a margin of safety. Yeah, sure. Maybe the players aren't going to have these crazy, ridiculous, broken combos like you might see in a Magic the Gathering game that quote unquote break the game. but you're also going to avoid these horrific experiences, which make people say, I'm never going to play again.
And if you're not a collectible card game that needs to get its money by having people try to buy up all the cards in a set while the broken ones still exist from the previous sets and so on and so forth, then you'll have a very different experience than Fallen Empires. I think I agree with Derek on that. Like, that if you can avoid the worst case scenario, it's kind of like playing a role-playing game as a PC. Your goal is not to win the fight by the most that you can possibly win. Your goal is to fight through maybe hundreds of encounters and never lose the fight.
Right.
Never TPK.
Right.
You need consistency. And variance goes against you there because losing one time and you lose.
Correct. It's the risk of ruin is exceptionally high. And I was saying this to before, like, if you look at your standard role playing game, I could be third edition, fourth edition, fifth edition, Pathfinder 1, Pathfinder 2. If you ask anybody, if you back tested it, how many encounters did you go through in your years of playing that game? How many times did you die? If you do the math on that, your odds of winning any given encounter are like 99.9%. Because if they are even 95%, if your chance of losing an encounter is just 5%, over 10 or 20 encounters, you're almost guaranteed to wipe or at least have several people die. And that's definitely not an experience, because for a lot of players, having their character die, certainly having a TPK, would definitely rank as a 1, 2, or a 3 experience. Sometimes you get sadists like me who think, that was a great session. But it is a case where you really have to be very mindful of how people perceive ruin in their game. Just like you have to be mindful of how people role play in your game.
Nope.
Yeah, let's talk about role playing.
You went right to it.
That's the actual topic.
Well, first off, don't forget super chats answered right away. And if I could get this overlay working, it'll pop up on top of us showing you the super chat. Hopefully that works. And if you get us 50 likes, we're up to 13. Got to get them likes up, and then Derek is going to do something silly.
Oh my gosh.
I don't know what it is. But so I was thinking about this because I play a lot of board games. I probably play, not as much. I used to play more board games than I did role playing. And, it's not like you sit there once in a while. If I was playing like Carcassonne or something, you'd like role play a little, like, oh, I'm the leader of my kingdom and stuff. So once in a while you role play a board game, but not always. But role-playing games, you're supposed to role-play. But I was playing with a group who I still play with that role-play very differently than, I'd say, like my Agents of Edgewatch. They don't do voices, but they role-play their characters. Like, if their character is stupid, in fact, I'd give them credit, because probably the hardest thing to do is, like, if their character has, like, an 8 intelligence or 6, they do stupid things. I mean, stuff they would never do, but their characters are doing stupid things all the time. Hey, look, there we go. There, the pop-up worked. Thanks, Dank Magician. That's a cool name. Was I don't even know what else that would be. Dank Magician.
It's probably a play on words of Dark Magician. From
Dark
Yu-Gi-Oh.
Magician.
Yu-Gi-Oh.
Oh, got it. I don't play Yu-Gi-Oh.
I don't play Yu-Gi-Oh either, but I am aware of what the Dark
Magician is like the main
don't know
character's
anything about
favorite
Yu-Gi-Oh.
card. You just
Right.
eventually learn that.
It's on that Blue Eyes White Dragon level.
Okay.
Yeah.
I'm a Yu-Gi-Oh nothing. There's a weak spot in me. So what was I saying? Oh, so they don't role play. There's two ways I see role playing. There's like our Julie Indigo. There's the Three Ring Adventure, and they do voices. They go in extensive detail about characters. We have entire episodes where we just spend a day in town eating food, going to restaurants. Okay, that's some of the role playing we do. Then you have the Agents of Edgewatch, which they role play but through their characters, through actions. If I'm like, all right, let's sit in town, they're like, nope, where's the next fight? Like, they just want to get to the action. But they role play very well in action, and they don't do voices, but you can tell when it's their character, and you can tell when it's them.
Right.
And I'm sure there's many other ways to role play.
There are more ways to role play than there are role playing games.
Yes, exactly. There's a million ways, but I've also played games where people just don't role play. They just They just play like it's a tactical board game, and that's it.
Right.
But are any of those wrong?
I think it's a definitional issue, which is to say, because if you think back to when role-playing games were created, and you've ever read any of the stories of Gary Gygax and Dave Arneson playing in their basements in Lake Geneva or in Chicago, those were called role-playing games, and it wasn't because they were acting in character, and it wasn't because they had these really complex backstories or ideas. It was just simply because the player, were making decisions for a singular entity. You were playing the role of being a fighter in a D&D game. That was the role that you were playing. In that regard, like, look at something we were mentioning before we started, World of Warcraft. The way that when I played World of Warcraft back in the day with my friends, we would be on, TeamSpeak or whatever. And I would just be, I'd be saying, hey, Mark, get over here. I need a heal. We got an ad. Steven, are you going to go taunt that boss? But in theory, that is role playing. I am making decisions, not as Derek. I am making decisions because my character is a priest or my character is a rogue, and I have to do these rogue type things. I'm trying to get treasure and save the day, or get experience and get whatever, a goal accomplished. I am making all of these decisions under the pretext of this imaginary character. So whether I have a personality, whether even I'm in combat, I'm making a decision. I'm going to go engage this person and hit him with my sword. That's role playing. I very much separate acting. We call it fluffy bullshit time is what we call it on our Discord. FBT is what we say it. Describing things, getting really into something, adding on layers of dialogue and stuff. None of that is actually required to play the game. But I think if you're playing tabletop role-playing games, that is almost by definition role playing.
So I agree with Derek that this is all about the definition of the word, and it's going to be very difficult because we don't have a shared definition, just like in so many debates in the world where people can sometimes get into really vicious debates, mainly because they don't agree about the definition of the same word. For example, Derek, you used World of Warcraft as an example, and like, you're absolutely right that the term role play, but when it was initially coined, was pretty much just used to mean you take the role of that character. But in World of Warcraft in particular, at least back when I played it for a class project, which was a long time ago.
Yeah, sure you did, Mark.
60 was the limit. What?
Yeah, it was a class project, Mark.
No, it was. In my interactive
he wrote his
non-linear narrative
he wrote
class,
something. He wrote like his dissertation
about
in MIT.
The economics and narrative of it. It was one of the suggested term projects.
I should have gone to MIT. That's all.
Go to MIT where you could write your paper about.
It was a great
World of Warcraft
humanities class. Our literature department is fantastic. But when I did, like, there are servers that were called role-playing servers and non-role-playing servers, and they did not use your definition of role-play.
Well, they're all wrong.
I'm not saying that your definition is right or wrong, because I think everybody's definition is valid for them. But the definition that World of Warcraft was using for roleplay was closer to the magical tea party thing that you were talking about before, where you were like, no, I am a member of the Alliance of Lordaeron, and together we shall fight off the great black dragon Onyxia, who has pretended to be a noble in Stormwind City.
You know what?
Sorry. Yeah, go ahead.
I was going to say I can give you the history of that if you want, Mark. Because John Statz, lead developer on World of Warcraft, and I was in Friends and Family of World of Warcraft, and so I actually know all the development history behind it. So during Friends and Family, they were not going to have roleplay only servers. They were definitely going to have PvP and non-PvP, but a lot of people asked for it. And so they gave in, and it was an experiment, and they did one. I can't remember which one it was. They did a PvP roleplay server. But those are definitely the least populous servers by far. And they didn't do a lot of them, but they did because there was enough fans that asked for them during the Friends and Family beta.
But to continue that definitional concept, I mean, number one, obviously the term was coined, right, in 1974. So as a game, right? So from a start base point, you have that baseline. But then let's take it forward 50 years or 48. Let's take it to Pathfinder 2nd edition. There is nothing in that rule book that requires, states, mechanicizes, or otherwise has any sort of suggestion that the way that this game is to be played is used in what is now in the vernacular role play, right? There is nothing in the game that requires that I be descriptive in order to make an attack. This is very different from other forms of TTRPG books. So, and Pathfinder 2nd edition, we would all clearly say is a role-playing game, right? Now, yeah, sure, maybe there might be some hints and suggestions about,
it
you
starts by
you
saying
should
what
play.
is a role-playing game at
Yeah, but
the
they
beginning
also
of the book, and then it does say that you're going to act in character.
Right. But by that definition, if I act in character playing Monopoly, does Monopoly become a role-playing game?
Yes.
You might be role-playing in Monopoly, whether or not it's a role-playing game. You could role-play in Monopoly. Right.
So if you role-play in Monopoly, it's not a role-playing game. But if you don't role-play in a role-playing game, then what are you doing?
Tactical. In my case, tactical fighting.
I think you're still playing a role-playing game.
Metagaming.
Okay, wait.
But then that is a word that has its own very, very many.
All right, wait. So let's just give me a second here. You guys all played Risk, right?
Of course.
Yes. Not very much because it's not very fun.
Agreed. I'll also agree with that.
I agree. Have you played Risk 2210, which is a lot of fun?
No.
That's the one where you can blow up the board. It's the Legacy game, or no?
No. That's Risk Legacy. Risk 2210. You only have 5 turns, and that's it. Okay. It's a very good game. Anyhow, we used to play Risk all the time. When you play Risk, I can argue that you always role play. Whether you want to or not, because you're like, my country will attack you. I mean, heck, even in the Seinfeld, they were doing it. Like, it just becomes part of the game that you are role playing.
I don't necessarily agree.
You don't? Okay, let me go. Okay.
Maybe when you play Risk.
Okay, let me. Okay, I guess you're an old. You're just like computer. Mark's a computer.
Once again, and we're probably all operating under different definitions of role play. Like, there's a spectrum, right? For Stephen, for you, the question is, do they use voices or not? But both of your 2 examples were talking in character. Just one used voices and acted it out more. But there's also a step beyond that where they don't talk in character, but they talk in third person and still try to act as that character would be. So there's you could say, Amiri rushes into the battle and attacks with her sword, in a very aggressive voice. But you're doing it in third person.
Most
then
people
you can be
who
very
are
detached and say that, and then there's the point where you're just literally just treating your piece as a pawn on a board game, and you do not even try to think about their internal thought process in any way. You metagame with all the information you have from bestiaries and not the information that your character has. Like their supposed parents are over there somewhere, and whatever. I'll get 5 more experience points if I kill this monster. I'll get more gold if I open the treasure chest. And you are completely.
But you're doing that in the guise of playing the role of a barbarian.
But the question is, did you make a character that is so detached and is basically just you, or did you, especially if the character had no backstory, you could claim that you did, but you could also claim that no, my character is not like that. I don't have a character, or I'm just playing this to attack things.
Well, the reason
it becomes a question that is like a Turing test that you can't really, for the definition of role play that you're doing what your character would do, you can't really prove that someone is or isn't doing that. That's sort of what I was trying to get to.
Yeah, I think what it comes down to is, though, it's what is, right? There's a game component to it, right? Clearly, we could sit around and I could pretend to be Amiri and you could pretend to be, Ezrin or whatever. And we could role play as those people, but that's not a game, right? That's just play acting. That's like doing a theater camp type exercise, right? The game element obviously has a component to it. So, but the game of Pathfinder 2, the game of 5th edition, the game of 3rd edition is a game of make a D20 check. Is it higher than your skill check? No. Yeah. DC, yes or no. It's all this tactical miniature moving around nonsense that we're talking about. The game, that's the game. There is nothing about the game that has anything to do with personalities, motives, goals, voice acting, making heartfelt decisions, having beliefs and dreams. All of that is sprinkles on top of a very delicious sundae. You don't need them. It's optional. Maybe it makes your Sunday really great Sunday, but they aren't required. You could functionally play Pathfinder 2nd edition, and not just combats. You could do social encounters, you could do exploration encounters, and it could all be done in a very perfunctory, functional, formulaic way. Yeah, you're still making decisions. You could go through a whole adventure path like that, and you're making decisions because you need to accomplish goals, and you're needing to, do the things that you need to do mechanically. But I would still argue that because you were doing that under the guise of playing the role of this character in this game, that is still role playing.
I mean, I think I came up with an example that might actually be able to tease this out. And if it can't, then there is always anything is role playing, and it doesn't matter what it is that you do. So suppose you have Ezran and Amiri, and they've been working together. Ezran has saved Amiri's life hundreds of times. Amiri and Ezran work well together. They've gone on lots of adventures. They're pretty high level. Ezran is always super generous with Amiri, and Amiri is very grateful in character. They're playing out. And I'm playing Ezran and you're playing Amiri Day. And then I just steal $200 from your wallet at one point, and you find out, and then you go up to Steven, who's the GM, and you're like, all right. So during the night's watch, Amiri decapitates Ezran.
This sounds like a great game.
And Steven says, why? And you say, because Mark stole $200 from my wallet. So Steven's like, is there any reason that Amiri did that? Because Mark stole $200 from my wallet. Is that... I tried to make an extreme example so that if we could define anything as not role-playing, then maybe that could be it.
I hate to break it to you.
Define that as not role-playing.
That's
if the only reason that you'll give is an out-of-character reason.
That's not that extreme. That has happened in all my actual plays.
Wow. Oh my God. I'm not even going to bring any money in my wallet when I come to PaizoCon for the actual play game that I'm playing.
Chris Beamer.
$200 stolen from them in every
okay, in Dead Sons, Chris Beamer.
Steven, that must mean you're the one who was stealing, because there's probably no player who was adding all of your actual.
No, let me tell you. So at Dead Sons, they were interviewing this guy, and he was like a cultist, and he wasn't giving them information. And Chris Beamer's like, "I've had enough of this. I pull out my gun, I shoot him in the head, and kill him." And I'm like, "That happens." And they're like, the other person's like, "What are you doing?" I'm like, "Too late, he's dead." And then. It seems to be a theme. I see Jason McDonald's on here. He was in both games. And then in the he wasn't in this one. And then in the circus game, they were interrogating a cultist. It seems to be a theme. And suddenly she said something that one of the characters didn't like. And then he cast a spell and kill her on the spot. And they were so... Actually, Vanessa was in that game, Mark. And Vanessa was so angry. She, like practically left the game. She was so angry that someone just killed this person. Not only in cold blood, but had all this information.
They did something that the character didn't like, right? In my
and
example,
the player, both, right?
Sure.
They went both ways.
In my example, I cherry-picked it to make sure that no reason was given except for that the out of character thing, and there was no reason except for
no reason. They just said, I'm like, I cast. It was like I cast telekinetic projectile and I throw a chair at her head and kill her.
The reason that argument though falls apart, Mark, is because the game also though has this weird backward synergy where the idea that you and your character are sort of this sacrosanct decision, pair that makes decisions, completely in sync with one another. There's no, especially Pathfinder 2 and 5th edition and D20 based games derivatives, there is no disconnect between what I, the player, can and will and want to do and what my PC can't and will and want to do. And like the best example to like contrast this with is like a game like Pendragon, right? Where, or something which I've talked about actually on my channel before, which I was really excited, and then found this little, because there was all sorts of cool ancestry feats that mention that like it's a human ancestry feat, I think, where like if someone tries to coerce you with intimidate, it critically fails if it fails. But the rules of the game, there's like a little sidebar that basically say you can't coerce or make impressions or request against PCs, because they get to make
force them.
Can't force them.
It can be a role-playing suggestion.
So it's one of those weird things for me, because like getting to like a role play thing, it's like I can demoralize you, but I can't coerce you, right? And so this to me is clearly this disconnect then, because if my character is frightened by demoralize, the rules of the game state what happens to me: -1 status or -2 status penalty. But there is no requirement on me whatsoever to perform or act or play my character in any different way. I just have a penalty. Whereas something like coerce would require me to play differently. And that is explicitly disallowed in the rules of the game. So to that end, do you actually need role play to play D&D and Pathfinder? I would say no. Now, granted, there's two lines of thinking here. Number one, I believe all these games are always role play games because of the nature of what they are. But if we use role play in the more modern vernacular sense, the descriptive characterization, do you need them to play the game? Absolutely not. I would argue that 5th edition D&D at least slightly mechanicizes inspiration by the ideals, flaws, and bonds system, where it's very clearly a one-to-one relationship between you have these things written down your character, they came from your character creation process, and when you do something in line with them, the game has a system to reward you. Hero points are kind of nebulous. The book talks about rewarding them for achievements. It's a little bit more nebulous, but it's still not something that is like written on your character sheet that you could point to and say, see, I role played, I get bonus.
Right. The world of Pathfinder 2nd edition is where, and even in that case, depending on your definition of role play, you might say it is or isn't role playing, because could still be done for entire out-of-game reasons or metagame reasons. But for example, when you're doing an influence encounter from the Game Mastery Guide, or even just in general when you're doing diplomacy or things like that, it mentions that you don't have to, it even specifically says you don't have to talk in character at
Correct.
all, whether or not you use a voice. But you do have to describe in roughly in general what kind of argument you're trying to make, what kind of thing you're trying to convince the person to do. And because of that, in the influence system, the characters that you're influencing will have listed weaknesses and strengths, bonuses and penalties that you'll get depending on what you say to them. So in that sense, it matters what you say, but
yeah,
depending on your definition of role play, may or may not be whether you role play.
So that system, which is an optional system in a optional book, is very good, and it's very interesting. And when I compare even something that I consider to be still a fairly mechanically heavy game, but a game that I really like a lot is Fantasy Flight Games' Legend of the Five Rings game. And in that game, you have 5 stats, but the stats don't correspond to like strength and dex and int like we think of. They instead refer to the manner in which you perform a skill. So any skill could be performed with one of the 5 stats. If you are performing a skill with earth, you are using logic and reasoning, and you are being grounded in your approach. Whereas if you use something like air, you are being a little deceitful, a little duplicitous, a little bit circumspect. And the manner in which you choose to approach a skill check, the GM either can make things up, or actually there are mechanical elements in the game. Like it'll tell you this NPC has the hot-headed personality trait, which means he is susceptible to being lied to because he likes to hear what he wants to hear, but he's bad at being reasoned with because he's a hot-headed fool. Those DCs are lower, those DCs are higher. This is a very different, because now I can role play in that context without ever describing a single thing. Because by saying I'm going to use air approach when I try to convince them, we all understand that I am essentially kind of bending the truth and being a little bit evasive. That is sort of pushing the game in that direction. Pathfinder 2, 5th edition, D20 is a much more straightforward. It doesn't really care how you do a check, right? It only cares that you are doing one. There's, fundamentally, there's nothing like Pathfinder 2, 5th edition. let's say I'm attacking an orc. Let's say I'm 5th level and I'm attacking an orc. My attack bonus is X. Now, let's say I'm 5th level and I'm attacking an orc, and this is the orc that killed my parents. The game mechanically makes no distinction between those two. Those are both just a strike attack roll with whatever your bonus is. Now, sure, yeah. I mean, players might go, oh, my GM would give me a bonus for this and maybe give me a hero point for that. But that's not what the rules say.
Yes,
I don't think you need a role play.
Yeah, but the rules are
difference
whatever
is
you
that-
want them to
that
be, because
If
it's
that orc
a
killed your
role-playing game.
parents, then that's the orc you're going to attack. Or if it's
Sure,
role-playing. The
but I don't-
role-playing is
but I don't
the
have
choice
to,
attack
Mark.
that orc,
But
and
I
you
don't have to, Mark.
Wow.
I don't have
No,
to.
you don't, and that's also a role-playing choice.
Because I might go, yeah, that's what, I mean, obviously that's what my character would do, but tactically we're going to wipe if I don't go kill this thing. So I'm going to go over there and kill that. And the game, by the way, does not reward you for making bad decisions in the name of your character.
Wow.
I mean, hero points in general, that's kind of one of the things that they say they could be used for, but it's versatile, right?
Sure.
It doesn't phrase it as bad decisions, but in essence, being heroic during a moment often is, compared to like the like purely Machiavellian tactical thing. It generally is a bad decision that you're doing for the feel of being a hero. So like I am really bad at handing out hero points when I'm supposed to. Even I would give someone a hero point for attacking the orc that killed their parents when there was another target that was also out there that was dangerous and going with their character arc in that way.
So wait.
Yeah. No, Steve, please.
Let's stop. You guys are really into it, but a few things. Because I'm like, we need a break. You guys are like so into it. I'm just sitting here doing my taxes
I
while
can
you
go
guys
for
are
hours.
chatting. I noticed. I'm like, whoa, you guys are really into it. A few things. One, we have more than 50 people here, so we can have enough likes for Derek to.
What are you gonna make Derek do?
I don't know.
We don't know, but we're gonna find out. We just need 50 likes, and we get Derek to do something silly.
Make him do a Leshy voice.
Oh,
Because that combines voices for characters.
that
and
would be
Leshies.
great.
So this is a great opportunity, though, for me to interject with one thing,
Yes.
obviously fans of Knights of Last Call
Shooty voice.
know this. Number one, Derek does not like leshies.
Right.
But through what I will only term an unfortunate series of events and a failure to appreciate how silly and ridiculous a lot of my supporters are, a massive tip goal was reached, and
Yes.
I have been co-opted into not only playing Fistful of Flowers, which is the new
It's really good.
Yeah.
Leshy themed tea party, but
I've seen it. It's really good.
Linda did an amazing job on
I
Yeah.
have to cosplay as a Leshy because
that. You have to cosplay
my
as a
God!
Leshy for
Yeah.
people
Wow!
who hate Leshies.
yes,
Dude,
correct.
I know you live near me. I want to go to that. You gotta invite me over. I'll cosplay too.
Which of the Leshies are you going to cosplay?
I don't know.
The flower.
I'm not going to lie to you. I don't know shit about leshies, only that I hate them.
Wow.
I've been reading through Quest for the Frozen Flame. Actually, we're starting our Quest for the Frozen Flames AP adventure tonight live.
Yes, I was
7
going to
p.m.
plug that for you. I forgot.
Okay,
but
great. This is session 0, so it's just us going to be making characters. But in going through the Quest for the Frozen Flame modules, I think that does have the Pine Leshy, so I'm at least familiar with
Wow.
the Pine Leshy.
Okay, well, you could be the dandelion that's on the cover.
You're going to be the
that's been shown.
dandelion.
And it's like a dandy that also looks kind of like a lion, and it's a dandelion.
Just
Oh,
pretend you're
that's-
not a Leshy. You're just a bad guy in Cuphead.
Right.
There's like, remember
right.
that guy in Cuphead? Yeah, you'd be the guy shooting the bullets out of his fingers. But
Anyways, continue,
damn,
Stephen.
that's
I
a
didn't even know that when I suggested
that's
you
a bet
doing
to
Leshy
lose.
voice.
Yeah.
wow.
Well,
Yeah.
there's a mega goal which will make everybody else have to cosplay as well. But some people say that if we reach that goal, we should make an even goal above that to make it back so that only I have to cosplay to make it particularly embarrassing.
Everyone, we got 46 likes. We'll have to have you
Currently,
cosplay
everyone's
as a
cosplaying,
Leshy.
and then the goal would remove cosplay from everyone.
No, we'll
except
just have
you.
him cosplay the next time he's on with us. Or no.
Oh, that would be fantastic.
But speaking of Leshies, let's see. We got a few things. First of all, we have, and I put this up on screen, we have our PaizoCon schedule, more or less. This isn't public yet, but I have it, so I'm going to give it out. So on Friday, we're trying to put together a game, and this actually would be on the Paizo official channel. This would be official content, so I haven't gotten the okay yet. But this would be Mark is going to write a custom adventure for the World of Alucard and Battle Zoo, and we'll be playing the Iconics, one of which is a Leshy, but I have a feeling Linda will play that one. And we're going to have myself, Nonat, Vanessa, and Linda Zayas Palmer, Vanessa Hoskins, play. And so we'll play our characters, and then who knows, they'll be level 1, so this should be interesting. But there'll be the 4 Iconics for the Jewel of the Indigo Isles. So I'll probably play the parrot, and then we'll have Vanessa will probably play the dragon, and then Nonat can play the... Oh, no, he'd be the Gatsugori. I guess he would...
Aren't there more than 4 miniatures?
Oh, yeah, there's more than 4 miniatures, but there's only the 4 main
on
Iconics.
Making the Iconics that just work well with that. Whichever Iconics work well with the one shot.
Oh, okay,
right?
We can do it that way too then.
Because are there more than 4 Iconics that have to be made? If
no,
there's only
just,
4 Iconics
just
that
4.
have to be... Oh, well then that's easy. Then I'll just make those. Never mind that.
I was like, well, in that case, I'm not making. You thought it was all 8. No, there's not 8 Iconics that need to be made.
Iconics that
4.
you have to write, the better
4.
for any game.
4 Iconics instead of 8.
So much effort compared to what they
yes.
what they put back.
No, I know. The other thing is online content. So on Saturday we have 3 panels right now. We might have more. If anyone has had ideas, I can easily add panels. Trust me, it's simple. These will be live at PaizoCon, but I'm also going to stream them on this very channel. So make sure you join, subscribe, do everything you can so that you get notified. And
unless you're at PaizoCon.
Unless you're at PaizoCon, in which case come by.
You definitely don't want to miss the 1 p.m. Pacific.
No.
Battle Zoo 2022 future products on May 28th.
Yeah.
Is it bad that I don't even know where PaizoCon is located?
Yes.
Yeah.
Can you guess?
Seattle.
Guess where it is. Guess where do you think it is?
Yeah, I mean, I'm going to guess Seattle. Obviously.
Well, you're wrong. It's at SeaTac, which is close. So... which I guess technically is in Seattle. But...
They are going real far on the on sending their employees.
Hey, the company's in Redmond, so it actually is a bit of a...
It's a bit of a hike.
It's an all of an hour. It's an all of an hour drive. Yeah,
dude, have you driven in Seattle?
Only a couple of times. We used to have a when I worked for Progressive, we had an office in oh God, I don't remember the name of the town.
That's like interesting. Southeast. That's real interesting.
You're assuming
Derek.
everyone
Anyhow,
who works at Paizo can afford a car. It's a lot longer if you have to take the buses.
So first we'll have online creation Q&A, which it'll have myself, Mark, Nonat, and Vanessa Hoskins, and all of us have various different degrees because Nonat does very different videos than Vanessa, that does very different than I do, and Mark. So we'll give you like our take on how to create online content. Whether it's even just playing VTTs or doing a podcast or doing YouTube or doing Twitch, because all of them do things differently. And that's at 11 p.m. Pacific, 2 p.m. Eastern. Then
11 a.m. Pacific.
A.m., yes. Creating a winning monster for RPG Superstar. Mark and I will go through in detail as much as we can and answer questions of how to create a good monster or a winning monster, because creating a monster is really hard. Like really creating a monster is easy. Creating a really good, well-balanced, iconic monster that can win like platinum or grand prize or even gold in RPG Superstar is really hard because it is tough to create.
And have Derek like your monster.
And Derek like your monster. It's even harder.
You might have a platinum that he just hates.
Yeah, I know.
I did approve of the platinum monster. I thought it was probably the best in the book, so that makes sense.
Well, no, you didn't like the
there was one platinum you didn't
the
like.
Constructed.
Right?
He didn't like the constructed constructs. Yeah, the maitre d'. Believe it or not, I can see why, but in reality, those things they're really powerful because they're support, and support for monsters is one of those things that I just played something with that, and when PCs have a support monster helping the other monsters, oh my god, that goes up 2 degrees. It goes from like moderate to severe very quickly. There's suddenly like, wait, he's healing them and he's giving them buffs. This is not good. It becomes.
We'll discuss this in that panel, but support monsters are also incredibly hard to get right.
Oh yeah, very
that's
hard.
One thing that Derek may have noticed is that they're very difficult. Even
they're really hard.
You can win a prize and still have missed some details on it.
Yeah.
And I know that when I went through my monsters for this year's contest, I didn't have all of them, right? But I found exactly one monster that was in there that was like, this is a perfectly executed, like mid to high level support monster, and I gave it extra points for that because
I think it's hard to make a good
only one
support PC. I mean the tools are there, but it is hard to to structure yourself and be like, how do I use my actions to make sure that I'm getting the best bang for my buck for other people, right?
It depends on your class. If you want to play a mindless support PC, which is not the best support PC you can ever play, but is the most mindless to give you the most bang, I would suggest Bard with Harmonize and Inspire Defense and or Doom.
Inspire
Defense
is pretty powerful.
Inspire Courage, Harmonize, Inspire Defense.
Because I'll tell you, Mark, you're very well. The status bonuses to AC are pretty rare in Pathfinder Second Edition.
They sure are. And so if you have, like, there was a module called Cradle of Night to give you a GMPC Bard for some reason, and I converted it to Pathfinder to run the APG play test, which was just like, everyone played one of the APG classes, and then you had this Bard that's like 3 levels lower than the rest of your party. And so I just made her Inspire Defense Harmonize. And even though she was 3 levels lower, she was adding a lot to what they could do.
And then last but not least, the biggest one of all, Battlezoo 2022. Future products, spoilers, Q&A. So every single thing that we're going to be coming out with, I believe, in 2022.
I will be watching from home.
That one is, we're going to give it all out. We're going to tell you all about it. We're going to give out all the information. People are guessing on Reddit and the Discords.
Yeah, I made a guessing game on Reddit that the first person to post on Reddit with the right answer will win a prize. And I don't know what exact prizes that Steven will have available for
I
that.
didn't even know I was doing that, but okay. Thanks.
I can think of are a spoiler to the types of things that we're making, so I didn't want to
figure it out. I got enough stuff.
We'll figure it out if someone wins, which
we'll see.
On the Reddit so far, they may or may not have
We
won,
don't know. We don't know.
The point is, this is a 3-hour block on May 28th. And if you have to prioritize because you can't watch all 3 hours, then comment at the end.
Yeah, see the last one.
Yeah, do the last one if you can only do one.
Yeah.
Because that is going to be huge. And at least one of the announcements, and I would even say everything that we're announcing other than Battlezoo, Bestiary, Strange and Unusual is pretty nice, but one of them is ridiculously big.
And everyone keeps trying to guess. And the scary part is, as big as they're guessing, they're not guessing big enough, which is actually kind of insane.
That's not true for everyone.
Well, some of them are guessing ridiculous stuff.
Like, you're creating a new RPG system that is called Battlezoo Finder,
true.
And it's an entirely new game.
You're right. We're not creating our new RPG system called Battlezoo. We're creating 2. And then last, we have a new heritage. Last week, Derek was on a cruise or something, and he missed the Hardigan, which are the Klingon type Jem'Hadar battle ancestry. But this week, you get the Gatsugori, which are
a heritage for sprites.
Sprites! Tiny little sprites. Derek's favorite. You're always here when we're doing the fun ones. Look at them. They're so cute, though.
They seem very cute.
They're very cute.
Sprites are my favorite ancestry that I wrote for Paizo, other than the core ancestries, which were kind of a collab.
There you go.
Because I didn't write very many ancestries for Paizo.
Oh, there you go. The Gatsugori. I love saying them.
I do like the art. I do appreciate it. I really like the green hooded guy on the right.
Oh yeah, 2 little daggers.
I really like that. He looks pretty sweet, and I like the flame on the way it comes off of her fingertips. That's really
she's
good.
I don't have a name for her yet, but she is the iconic. She is the sorcerer iconic for Battlezoo, and she's depicted in all the art. So you always take 4 iconics and put them in the art for an adventure path, and then show them through the adventure path. So she is in most of the main art. She's one of them. And then
Very
the other
cool.
guy is a barbarian as well. So tell us just a few things, then we'll go back to the exciting topic where Steve falls asleep and Mark and Derek go at it. And Derek, we've hit 50 likes.
I see that.
So you better figure something out quick.
I don't know now. Well, okay, so what's the restriction here? What do I have to do? What do I need to do?
Something entertaining, something that was worth 50 likes.
Something that was worth 50 likes.
Yes, think about it. While Mark tells you cool things about the Gatsugore.
Oh, okay. So Gatsugore are a heritage for the sprite ancestry in Lost Omens Ancestry Guide. And the Gatsugore basically were first seen in Battle Zoo Bestiary, the original Battle Zoo Bestiary, as they're a fae, and they're just kind of like very obsessed with
tinkering.
Like making things, tinkering things, taking them apart, and they're always kind of doing something like that. And they're a type of sprite. And on the Indigo Isles, Gatsugore are among the more common sprites. Sprites are still a pretty rare ancestry in most parts, but Gatsugore are more found in that area. Obviously, PC Gatsugores, the ones who are wingless sprites and who start off without the ability to fly but eventually become powerful heroes, are still less common than the kind of monster or NPC Gatsugore that you see around the Indigo Isles. So in that case, they probably are the PC ones are probably still uncommon or rare, but they're actually a relatively common demographic among cities and settlements in the Indigo Isles. There's even some small villages and towns that are mostly Gatsugore. So that's what I have to say about that.
Yeah, they're fun. And Dank Magician actually asked if the setting for Jewel the Indigo Isles is Pacific Isles or Caribbean Isles cultures.
It's kind of its own thing.
It's its own thing. It's loosely based on like Hawaii.
In terms of the geography and climate, it's more based on Hawaii,
Yes.
but it's definitely not based on...
No.
It's not supposed to be a fantasy Hawaii. That's just kind of where it is in the world in terms of like the temperatures.
Yeah, the temperature and also
the way it looks.
One of the writers who actually lived in Hawaii, Patrick, so he had a lot of firsthand knowledge of Hawaii. So it was, and his adventure takes place on that island, so we're able to sort of get a lot of that. But one of the cool things about Hawaii is there's a lots different. There's something like, of all the biomes in the world on the Big Island, there's whatever, it's like 13 biomes. 11 of them, I think 12 of them are on the Big Isle. There's the only thing they don't have is tundra, but they have everything. Every single biome in the world is on one island. And I drove across it, and let me tell you, they're definitely there because I saw it all. It's kind of amazing. So we did that in ours. And actually here, I'm going back, here's the mini of the Gatsugore, and she looks exactly like the picture. She's actually standing on one foot. She's got a little fire coming out, and then she even has the cool wings on the back. And so this is what the mini will be if you buy the mini or the STL, and then you can print out your own. Actually, the
it's
minis
a really
came
cool
in.
looking little mini.
We got cool
basically,
minis.
it's got a climate that's like a Pacific island or Hawaii, but it is full of parrot people and pig people and dragons and sprites and goat
Dragon
people.
mini.
It does not have humans on it, and it is not culturally similar in any way to Hawaii.
So back to craziness of Derek and Mark. Now remember, there's been no super chats. There's barely been any questions, let alone super chats, because everyone is sitting here just fascinated by you guys going at it, saying how
we I think we vaguely agree that the question is really weirdly poorly defined, and so I'm just here trying to
so it's my fault. Got it.
No, you defined it with a decent wording.
Yeah,
just because it's based on the definition of a term that has come to drift.
Correct.
I agree with Derek that it's very difficult to actually tease out what it means.
And I do agree with you about the drifting part. And in fact, one of the things that we have started doing is I have started referring, right, because I have a library of role-playing games that I've played, and they all fall under this moniker of role-playing game. And I feel like very few of them fall under what I would definitionally call a role-playing game. So I have started creating terminology, things like traditional role-play. Like I have games that are called like, that really realistically like are storytelling games, right? Like games where you don't even roll dice, games like Microscope, if you've ever played that by Ben Robbins. It's described as a role-playing game. In my personal belief, that is not a role-playing game. Because you aren't playing a single role. You're not building a character and expressing yourself in this fictional reality through the lens and the actions of the game system of this character. But I started referring to things as like traditional role-playing games, action role-playing games, story role-playing games. I've started trying to create more nuanced definition because we get into a lot of fights in our Discord because we're all very passionate people. And again, it comes down to these definitional realities. But if I use the current, kind of colloquial definition of role play as, making decisions in character, having nuances to my character that is separate and distinct from, say, my own, and I'm describing my actions with adjectives and flair and meaning, and maybe even doing a little voice acting. Do you need to do that in D&D and Pathfinder? My answer is unequivocally no. I do not think you require to do it. I think the fact to this end, again, this will come off as derogatory because it has a derogatory connotation. Role play, ROLL play. I think Pathfinder 2nd edition and 5th edition D&D are both games that, in my opinion, have very little role playing in them. It's entirely up to you to make whatever you want. It's like a blank pizza. And if you want to role play a little bit or a lot of it, you could do that on top of it as much as you want. I think that is a strength to the system. It's not a derogatory statement. Because again, in fact, when we kind of talked about this and we went deeper into this, several people in my game system who don't necessarily have a wide range of game systems, we were talking about games like Fate, where you have these aspects. And Pathfinder might be called a background or an ancestry, right? You have these aspects to your character, and the GM has the ability to force you to take a penalty to a roll or force you to do a certain type of action. And in reward, they kind of basically give you this fate point, which is like a hero point Pathfinder 2. To me, that is a game that is very different than what 5th edition or Pathfinder is trying to do. Pathfinder and 5th edition aren't trying to, there's no agenda there to get you to role play. The mechanics of Pathfinder 2 are an action resolution mechanic system. It's not designed, in my opinion, to encourage the personification and inhabitation of a character that is distinct and separate from your own.
So Cheese of Ages, once again, the hero of the channel.
Big time hero, Cheese.
Yeah, this reminds me, have you ever played GM-less systems, given how easy to run 2E is? Do you think someone could make a variant that's GM-less? How do you think this affects role-playing games? So let me start, since I'm talking the least.
Yep.
The only thing I've played that's GM-less is, and I would say this would sort of count, is Choose Your Own Adventure novels, which I loved. And I also then played the ones where you had like little party, where you would make, like characters and then do the Choose Your Own Adventure with your characters, the sorcery books, Steve Jackson sorcery books. And I love those books. And I played those. I've never played any GM-less RPG game. The closest, maybe, like, there's some board games out there, like I would argue that Gloomhaven and other game systems like that are GM-less, because the book and the game is the GM. And there's a couple of those. Those are more board games.
To use that as an example, Gloomhaven's a great example. It's a fairly complex, robust board game system where the game system and engine sort of runs and reveals the instance. There's even passages of text that are to be read aloud.
And there's even a possibility to be role playing in Gloomhaven because your character has a hidden goal. That may or may not affect theirs. And then goes out of your control and retires from adventuring, whether you want to or not.
Correct.
Exactly. And that's what I was going to say. From that perspective alone, given people's modern, not my definition, but people's modern definition of role-playing games, I would argue that Gloomhaven is more of a role-playing game than 5th edition or Pathfinder 2. Because the character has a separate mechanical agenda that is outside of anything that you want to or can control. Like Derek, wants my Cragheart to keep adventuring with the party, But my Cragheart doesn't care about what Derek wants. My Cragheart wants to kill 20 vermlings and then retire. And when that happens in the game, you don't get to make a choice unless you cheat. Your character is done. It's over. Once my character has killed 20 vermlings, that character is done at the end of that adventure. That is my character existing separately from me. This is like the same concept in some role-playing games where in order to earn bonus experience points or to earn a check or to earn something, you actually are encouraged to fail. That is something that does not exist in 5th edition or Pathfinder 2nd edition, right? There's never an instance where you go into a situation and go, I want to fail this. Or it would be good for my character and for the nature of this game for me to fail this. And so it's interesting to me. Now, again, I think that's fine. I think that's what these game systems are doing. And then you could put as much in it. Because when I said this to people on my Discord, some people said, oh my God, you're right. But you know what? I have no interest in playing a game like that. That sounds horrifying to me. That loss of agency, that idea that this character isn't just like a mech suit that I am piloting inside and it does whatever I want it to do. This idea that it is a separate entity. It's just like if you're an actor on a TV show, you have ideas about what you think the character is, but the writers come back to you and say, guess what? Your character is an asshole this, episode. And you might disagree with that, but your job is to do your best to play out that character in the way that is believable and realistic and portrayed as such. That to me is what a role-playing game system would look like.
So I'm going to disagree with you on the fact that a loss of agency is necessary for the modern definition of roleplay, which seemed to be, I think you directly said that. So I want to make sure.
I was saying that could be an example of role-playing where the idea that I don't have complete autonomy over my character, that my character is, I don't want to kill that. Derek doesn't want to go after this guy. Because it doesn't make sense mechanically, it doesn't make sense in the story, but the mechanics of the game either reward me for making a stupid action, like chasing after him and abandoning the party, or they force me to abandon the party and go chase after this guy who killed my father. That is one
that if the game forces you to do it, that it's not necessarily more role-playing, even by the modern definition, because role-playing means that you have stepped into that role and you are making the choice to go after him. Now, they could incentivize you all they want, but if they actually force you to do it, then I would say it's not role-playing because it is the game is doing it. You did not.
But it's a role-playing game.
The game was role-playing, but not you.
But that's isn't that what the name and the definition?
A game where you made your Cragheart character. Yeah, and then as soon as you made it, it just did everything for you. That is not a role-playing game.
Okay,
right?
Sure. And I don't think anyone would suggest otherwise. But I mean, but even consider this, even in 1st edition D&D, if my character didn't play according to the tenets of my alignment, at least according to my DM, you were, maybe you weren't rewarded, but you were punished, right? Yeah. You lost a ton of experience points and then you needed double experience points to get to the next level, right? I would argue that 1st edition D&D, in a sense, had more mechanical, it was more of a role-playing game than its more modern antecedents or precedents.
So it feels like you are kind of going into, if you're talking about like the stages and hierarchies of like morality, I think maybe it's Kohlberg's model. You're coming from more of the like stage 1, you have to be directly punished or rewarded by an exterior force in order for the system to be encouraging a particular action.
What gets measured?
Feel like PF2 is more in the, they have set you up to succeed if you want to role play and also want to role play more and have explained how that can help you, but also want to allow a spectrum of play at your comfort level and sort of you can go all through it or not.
Yeah, and I'm, by the way, not criticizing Pathfinder 2 for this decision. I actually think it's a valid decision for the type of game that you are trying to create or the type of experience that you want to have at your table.
Kind of like, think I disagree with you about Pathfinder 2. That's sort of my more positive way of putting the same thing you said.
Sure. Yeah, and I'm not trying to make it sound like a negative. In fact, I think it's a great strength. It's basically a fairly blank canvas, and it is saying, look, we are presenting you with this system physics rules resolution system, but it itself does not have an agenda, right? Like there are other games that have agendas. Maybe you have some difference of opinion here, Mark, but there are certainly games like, I'll give you a great example. Dungeon World is a game powered by the apocalypse. The nature of that game system is designed to push you towards results that create complications, because that's what the game system wants to encourage. It wants to create these sort of, tumbling stones that become an avalanche. Pathfinder 2 is almost agnostic in that regard. And I did want to say something from the chat, which is Adrian said, what about anathemas? Anathemas is actually a great example of a very rare place in Pathfinder 2nd edition where it is essentially in what I would term a role-playing mechanic. It is, because it's not a mechanical thing, right? It's not saying like you get a -2 penalty when you're attacking helpless children. It's saying, hey, you have to do your best to uphold the righteousness and defend the weak and give people a chance at redemption. And if you don't, the game will mechanically punish you. That is, in my mind, a difference of opinion, because in Pathfinder 2, if I have a character who we've established has a given set of personality and a given set of goals, but then during a game session, I move and operate and act in complete, seemingly ignoring of those goals or personality traits, what do we do? Would you, as the GM, Stephen, ever step in and say, no, your character wouldn't do that?
Yes.
Okay.
I've done that many times.
But isn't that agency squashing? Isn't that you stepping in and saying, no, you don't get to play your character the way that you want to play it?
No,
I feel like this really is like the Kohlberg thing, and you're at stage 1, obedience and punishment, where the only way you can role play.
Mark, that's the only thing people get: stick and carrot, stick and carrot.
Hold on, because that is the claim, at least in that psychological model, is that that's what like small children start out with, and then they learn to act on their own self-interest, even if it's not literally a stick or carrot. Then there's social conformity, where you kind of do what other people are doing. So I guess you'd be role playing because everyone else in your group is role playing, or not because they're not. Then there's authority and maintaining social order. And then you get to a social contract where you are just kind of trying to figure out something that is better for everyone. Like your group can have a social contract, and then universal ethical principles. So I guess what you're saying is that most players are towards the lower common denominator.
Yes.
Where they need a stick or a
let
carrot,
me ask you guys a question. I have a question, which is a funny story, because I always have funny stories. So last month and a half, I was at GAMA, which is the Game Association manufactures something. I don't know, forget exactly what it is, but it's all the people who make games that are selling them to the people who have stores. And they had a demo. And one of the games I definitely wanted to play and I tried was Bard Song. So Bard Song is kind of a clone of Gloomhaven. It did very well on Kickstarter. And I was like, cool, I want to try this out. So we tried it out, and I had the people who wrote and designed the game were all there. And the way it plays is that it's kind of a tile picking game where you're in a dungeon and they're like, okay, you start on this side of the board and you got to get to the other side of the board. That's how you leave. Like you have to literally get from point A to point B. And there's pre-made tiles and you have to put them down to figure out how to get to the exit. And then and you roll to figure out like what monsters are in the rooms. And there's treasures and all that fun stuff. And there was 5 of us. And we were playing. And then I said, you know what? And then they started to defeat the monsters. And they're like, okay, you're up, Steve. What do you do? I'm like, I go and I run and open up the door. They're like, well, we're not done with these monsters. I'm like, yeah, don't care. I'm going to go run open the door. And then it was my turn. I'm like, okay, I run across the room, past all the monsters, and open up the next door. Because I'm like, isn't the whole point of this game to get to the end? I am running for the exit, bleeding every single encounter, because I'm like, well, I'm getting out of here. You guys can do whatever the heck you want to fight them. That's on you. I'm leaving. So I'm like, now let me ask you the rules. Can I get to the exit, find, and then leave? The guy's like, yes. but you shouldn't do. That's all I wanted to know. The answer is yes. I keep going. So I ended up bleeding, opening up 5 rooms, like 10 monsters. These guys were all like, what are you doing? I'm like, I'm playing my character. He wants to get out of here, man. This place is a death trap. And I got out, and I don't know how they did it, but they did manage to barely get by and kill everything.
Sure.
And of course, I wasn't playing with regular people. They actually thought it was annoying but funny. But the designers came to me, and they were like, we have run this game hundreds of times, thousands of play tests, done demos and all of this. No one has ever done that. Not once. I was like, really? Because you just assumed everyone was going to stick together? I'm like, boy, then you haven't played with my groups very much, or you don't know how to do like stress testing for code or games. Because that's the first thing you do is stress test it. I'm like, and it worked pretty well. And he was actually very happy. Like, they were talking to me for quite a bit.
So basically, their whole design principle was based on the idea that players were going to do what they were supposed to do, right?
Correct.
Which is fight the monster, kill it, go to the next one, fight the monster, kill it, go to the next one. And to be clear, I mean, you just described, I think, a fair number of people in the RPG hobby.
Yeah.
You know, there's a lot of people who just like, I'll tell you this, I was playing Adventure Path. You know, people will, you know, people, including myself, will rate an adventure path harshly if it feels more like it's a railroad or feels like it's very overly linear. But I played with new players, and their biggest concern was, I want to make sure I do what's right. I want to make sure I do so that I get the best ending. I don't want to make any decisions that are going to have negative consequences later on.
But the whole point is they were designing this game, which is supposed to be like a Gloomhaven, which is supposed to have, like, you have very specific, it's very similar. You have different characters, they have different abilities, they have a whole backstory.
Do the other people also just get knocked out until the next fight if they get taken
you
down
can
in the
die.
battle?
In fact, I did die. You come back, and there's like a time mechanic, and it's gold. It's like there's a gold mechanic, and gold is used
there
kind
a
of
penalty if you get killed, though?
Yes,
like,
if you
one
get
person
killed,
makes it to the exit,
yeah,
and everyone else gets murdered by
yes, everyone gets, yeah,
monsters,
there's group
does that make
gold.
the party much worse off?
There's group gold, and every time you die, it takes like 12 gold to bring you back. So not only was me running bad for me, but it was bad for the party. And then at the end, where he's like, well, most parties get...
So the reason people didn't do it is it was literally bad for the person who did it.
It was bad for everyone. But
yeah,
right. But the point is
so
like,
it wasn't like you found something that was a good strategy to do.
Yeah,
that,
and it worked. I got out of there.
Thought of that was like, wow, this is just much better, and no one thought to do this outside the box.
Well, because they're assuming that everyone's going to kill things.
It was literally bad for you.
They assumed everyone's going to do, which is the carrot. Like, well, you kill the bad guys, you get the gold, you level up. I'm like, yeah, I don't care. Like, but that's not what you're supposed to do. I'm like, yeah, but I don't care. Okay. Haven't you heard of the 4 design principles of the different characters? Like, there's the helper, and there's and then there's the griefer. I'm like, well, I'm playing the griefer, baby. You're gonna see what happens. And they never played with the griefer. I was like, then you guys might want to test this a little bit more. At that time, it was too late. It was like they were horrified. Horrified. I was playing with that. You do have the
advantage that in real life you could just say, well, we're not going to play that game with you anymore.
Yeah. Well,
now I finally realize why Steven was a forever GM, and he's only played his first character as a druid in like decades recently. It was because he got banned from games for being a griefer.
Hey, I'm not a great. Whoa. So I was role playing. Don't say Steve. No, I was not doing anything. See? My character was doing it.
That's really an excuse.
No, this is a great segue.
It's not an excuse.
This is a great segue.
I was playing a character.
This is a great segue.
I would never do that in real life.
We've all heard the trope of the lawful stupid paladin, right? Or the awful stupid paladin. We were playing a Pathfinder 1 campaign, and I had a paladin of Iomade. Lawful good, obviously, and kind of like a naive, overly religious zealot. And in this particular campaign, our GM had instituted we had been playing a lot of Fate, and basically your character had 3 traits or aspects of your character. It could be part of your alignment, it could be your deity, it could be a belief. And so like one of mine was like, to destroy evil in all of its forms. And the idea was whenever you did something that was in alignment with that goal, you would mark a tick. And after you got 10 ticks, you could clear it and you got a bonus feat. This was Pathfinder 1. So basically a mechanical incentive for me to do things that my character would want to do. And numerous times the GM sort of, took this, ran with this and set this up. We also had a character in our party who was, dare we say, a little bit more of a morally ambiguous Raceland type mage.
And Steven?
Yeah.
Hey.
And the party had discovered this, they had killed this necromancer, and here was the necromancer's spell book. And obviously the party wizard desperately wanted this book in order to plummet secrets, see what spells he could get from it, copy them into his spell book. And my paladin said, this is a unholy artifact of a necromancer. It must be purged and destroyed. And I kind of strong armed my way to the front and destroyed it. Now, as a player at that table, you could argue that, like, well, if no mechanical incentive existed, I was just role playing my character, but I was also kind of being a dick, and I was kind of being a problem for this other character, and I was making things problematic. But the fact is like the player understood that by me doing that, that was just like me flanking in a combat. That was my character being played a certain way so that I could get a bonus feat, so that I could get, the next spirited charge, so I could do quadruple damage with my lance on my celestial mount. By mechanically incentivizing it, it almost made Steven's chaotic evil behavior, or I should say antisocial behavior, more acceptable.
Chaotic evil.
Because the player at the table understood Derek wasn't just destroying these books because he wanted to be a dick and he wanted to shit on him. He wanted to do it because he was like, hey, I get it. Your character has these specific beliefs, and when you're doing that, the game is rewarding you. And I understand that that's just part of the way the game we're playing. And so in a way,
what Steven did was actually disincentivize with he lost 12 gold for each of the people he routinely killed.
Correct.
Glorious,
So
I tell you.
literally not even neutral. He was actually hurting himself in order
I was hurting everyone.
hurt everyone else.
Great. Freaking great. I loved it. By the way, the first and only character I've ever played for Pathfinder 2nd Edition was a neutral evil druid that worshipped Zonkathon. Just letting you know. There you go, Mark.
But yeah, so I think it's fine that you have a game that requires this. But I mean, again, I don't think and again, at a high level, I think all of these games are role-playing games, right? Like I think if the three of us were playing World of Warcraft together and we were referring to each other as Steve, Derek, and Mark, and we were talking about, ads and getting sweet loot, like I still think that's role-playing because I'm playing a priest, or I'm playing a rogue, or I'm playing a warrior. I'm not controlling an army. It's not abstract like in chess. It's not like vague like cubes and Risk, right? It's very much a specific role. I am fulfilling a role in this game, and I am playing that role in order to achieve victory in that game. To me, that is like I wouldn't say that because if a group of people in the 1970s weren't, talking in character and making up cool personality and backstory, they just wanted to get the treasure on level 8 so that Tensor could level up. To me, that's still role playing, right? Otherwise, you're basically saying that Gary Gygax didn't role play. And I think
I'm going to try to put those two together. So, Derek, let's say we were doing a raid in like Black Rock Spire or something like that, and you were the role playing the warrior, and you were like, all right, I'm gonna grab the aggro, Mark, quickly, get up a heal on everybody. And I was like, okay, my heal's on cooldown, but I'll use regeneration or something like that. And we're doing that form of role play. And Steven is supposedly playing a hunter, but he hasn't sent out his pet. He's not using Feign Death. He's not using any of the abilities. He just runs out, stomps on over all those dragon eggs, and Leroy Jenkinsingly makes all the baby dragons comes out for no reason, not because it's part of playing a hunter in our guild, just because he's Steven and he wanted to grief us and make us all die. And then he feigns death, and the dragons all lose interest and come after all of us and kill us.
Okay.
Is he role playing at that point?
Wait. No. A few things. First of all,
no. Okay.
John Statz designed Blackwing Spire, by the way. And second of all, I do only play a hunter in World of Warcraft. And third of all, everything you just described, I have done before. Yeah. And I do feign death.
Seriously?
Yes,
You've done that
I've
to
done
other people
that.
in WoW and made their gear get broken?
I've done that. Not on purpose, though.
I
will say not on purpose,
play
though.
With you again after you
Dude, I was a world class, one of the top, way back when it was Lich King. Me, Chris Beamer, and Bob Marquis were top raiders in the world, like big time, for a long time. But I will say,
I bet that if you tried to grief the other top raiders, they would.
let me tell you something. It was our guild. Here's the thing, and I only did that when we were wiping anyhow. So here's the thing: is that and if the freaking tank couldn't hold aggro, and I would get more aggro than the tank, which happened a lot, because hunters are OP, I'd be pretty pissed. Anyhow,
yeah, I would say that the fighter wasn't playing his role.
No, yeah, it definitely wasn't. But the point is that you can kick out someone, because it's like what you described, I've seen millions of times, and then we bench them, or kick them out. There you go. And that's the difference. You can't do that in Pathfinder, really.
I mean,
you can.
Not easily.
In fact, I think a lot of games of Pathfinder 2nd Edition out there in the universe, and if you're watching this later, I promise you, life is too short. Your game is too precious. Kick that player out.
True.
You know who I'm talking to you. Yes. You know, you think I'm not talking to you, but I am talking to you. Just get rid of them. Life is too short to deal with people like that, especially in a game that's supposed to be fun.
It's hard for some people, especially since it hurts to feel excluded.
I know.
And some people who form role-playing groups are those who are used to being excluded from other spaces. So that role players are sometimes especially vulnerable to having one very bad player who is making things terrible for their whole group, and they don't kick them out. So this is me agreeing with you, Derek.
Yeah, I know, I get it. The great shame.
If you feel like it's hypocritical or it's wrong, just try to think about why you feel that way and listen to Derek. That
it's the
problems for you and your group.
It's the paradox of tolerance, right? Like, can you be tolerant? If you're tolerant, should you be tolerant of intolerance?
Yeah, paradox.
Yeah, and the great shame of our hobby is that the people who probably would benefit from the most, right? These sort of maybe socially awkward, marginalized individuals are also precisely the people who have sometimes a hard time engaging and discussing in these games fully because of their social awkwardness and marginalization. So it's like they're the ones who need it the most, and it's like, yeah, and kick that person out because they are making you have a bad time, and that's what the rest of your life is like. This is supposed to be a haven. So if I could, I would come to all of your tables personally, and I would drag that person.
Okay, so there's a difference, because like that was a one shot, and by the end I forgot I had a catchphrase. Oh, what was the catchphrase? Whenever I would do something silly, but I always like this catchphrase, and before you know it, the whole table was saying it. So it was a one shot. This was a test. Like, we weren't playing a game. Like, they knew what was going on, and everyone was embracing it, including the guys running it. So it was funny.
Speaking of one shots, I've learned something very important from today's stream, which is I'm going to balance the encounters after like the very beginning of my one shot for PaizoCon for 3 players in case Steven's character gets arrested by the authorities.
Hey man,
at the start, or kicked out of the
Lucas
group.
Talking, who's the guy who, for the only time ever in history of me running a society game, gave Mark Seifter what are they called? Villain, not villain. What are the bad ones called? The infamy. I gave you an infamy point.
Gave me infamy.
Infamy. You got infamy, illegally, baby, because he was stealing from the register of a establishment in Starfinder.
It was not clear.
It's not clear that we're not supposed to open up the cash register and steal their hard-earned money. That was not clear. You didn't have a sign that said, "Please do not steal from us."
Starfinder Society.
What?
And that infamy got removed because you were cheating. You have to warn someone that they're Mark,
I believe the GM can do whatever they want, Mark.
That's
right.
That's
rule 0, Mark.
Derek, that's not how Starfinder Society
works. You see? It's all coming back. It's all coming back. You're like, Steve's so terrible, says the guy who got an infamy point from stealing.
I didn't get an infamy point. It's not
got
there.
it.
It's been removed
I gave it to him.
This was worth being on the stream alone for this moment. And yeah, and you know, kind of like finally codify my point, which is this: there are a lot of other game systems out there, by the way, which do mechanically incentivize role playing, and if we define role playing as what we've been talking about in this show, they require it. You know, a great example of that is like in Dungeon World. It is a rule of the game that you cannot actually take actions in that game. You can only describe things. You can only have a conversation, and the GM makes a decision about whether or not a rule triggers or not. This is very different from Pathfinder. Pathfinder, I could say, I stride, strike. Right? That is a legal. The command line interpreter will read that and say that will work. Whereas in a game like Dungeon World, it would not.
I thought you make a move, like the GM asks for a move.
A move occurs. A move occurs when it must occur.
Right.
But it triggers. It's almost like everything in that game is a trigger. We're just having a conversation. We're going back and forth. Now, when I get to the point where I describe that my character is opening up the orc from, sternum to groin with my greatsword,
then you made a move.
Then I made a move. And in fact, the game also says that the GM has to trigger the move. You can't choose to ignore it. So this is an instance where this is a very different set of circumstances. Now, I'm not trying to say that this is better. I'm just saying it is different. And I think that one of the advantages to a game system like D&D and Pathfinder is it is fundamentally, structurally, a very robust system for resolving challenging encounters, a lot of combats, but also exploration and social elements as well. And especially for the exploration and social elements, it's designed to resolve them in what I would call an expedient manner. Make a couple diplomacy checks, you're done, right? There is no combat skill. You can't, there's no victory. You could do victory point systems for a combat. You could get rid of combats in Pathfinder 2 and just use the victory point system. Put a couple new skills in the game that, melee combat skill, range combat skill, and just, I'm trained, I'm expert, whatever. You make some die rolls. Oh, you got 4 victory points. You win the game. You win the combat. But that's not the way the game is structured.
So you know what? I'm going to say, and I know you guys aren't so much into the sports ball. At least Mark
true.
Isn't. Okay, neither of you.
Derek is not either. Mark and I are both nerds.
So, you're nerds with the capital N. I'm a lowercase n. So, here was something fascinating. So, when I grew up, I was really into hockey and the Islanders. And the Islanders back in the early 80s were like this ultra dynasty that just was destroying everyone. And back then, in the early 80s, when people weren't wearing helmets and fights would break out every game and there was blood on the ice, like they were not fooling around. That's all gone, by the way, but back then, and they had what they were literally called enforcers on the ice, and one of them was Bobby Nystrom, who was this gargantuan guy. He's like 6'6", 6'8".
Can't play the game, but you just send him out to beat.
He can play, but you would look at him and it would be like goals 2, assists 3, penalty minutes 500. His goal was to protect Mike Bossy and the other stars in the team and beat the living hell. Like if you checked him or did something wrong, he would literally beat you to death. I mean, that was his job. And he used to say, and I'd see interviews with him, he was a nice guy. Totally nice guy, normal guy, but when he went on the ice, that was his role, that was his job, and that is who he became. And I'd say there's role playing in everything. I'd say in work you role play. I'd say at home you role play. Not the one you're thinking. You play, with your kids differently, and especially in sports, which is the closest analogy. Like the people when they're, and I watch a lot of sports, is that Tom Brady's a good example. When Tom Brady is playing, he becomes this other person. And you see it happen. And you'll see this a lot with athletes, that they literally change into this other persona, and their brain even changes, their chemistry. Like they change to this.
Right. Well, they can even, these are people they have every reason to want to beat the other team. And then after the team, the game's done, sometimes hard feelings, still persist, but a lot of times they're coming over there and, giving people handshakes and hugs and stuff like that, because it's a friend, and their job is to, play this game and to be this sort of menace, but that doesn't necessarily mean it has to go on beyond that. But I think it's important to note, though, that these people are being rewarded for that behavior, whether it's through being paid or played or having their contract renewed. They are being rewarded for what you would consider to be their antisocial behavior, right? In real life, if we had somebody who was going around beating the hell out of people, bloody ice, 500 penalty minutes, that person's called a felony offender, right?
Well, they did take that out of the game. In fact, that was that's now heavily penalized. Back then, it wasn't. Sure, it was a different time, and
that's because the people who wrote the game engine, the NFL or NHL, chose to design the system to encourage and reward different behaviors.
Correct.
We have
AKA
over 60 likes now, and Derek managed to pivot away from doing something.
I know.
I can't do anything. What do you want me to do?
Starting another conversation while he was thinking about it.
I have an
I'm gonna
idea.
pivot it back,
Mark,
Steven.
I'm not Mark. Tell us of all. Okay, let's pick. Here it is, Mark. Think of 3 to 5 really cute ancestries. We got Leshy. We got Shuni. You figure out a few.
Shuni aren't actually cute though.
Okay, no Shuni's not.
Let's do Leshy.
It's a small dog thing.
Leshy Sprite. Yeah, but they look like Shuni.
And you have to rank them from least favorite to most favorite to tell us why.
All right, come up with a 5. I could do this.
That's too easy, Steven, because
he has to give reasons why he likes
how much he hates them.
And hates them, and likes and hates them. Go both ways. You have to go both ways.
Okay, let me start by saying that
actually, better yet, chat. Give us the cutest, most adorable ancestries and races. In chat for Derek to rank.
My broader issue with
Poppets. There we go. That's number one.
Yeah, Poppets, the one that everyone knows. My biggest issue with ancestries like Leshy and something like that is I never feel like people who play them. It goes back to the role playing actually. I feel like people who choose these crazy ancestries do so, and then this character is put into this world, and it's very it's just very incongruent to me. Like I almost respect something like a Leshy or a Poppet more than I think a lot of people. In the sense that I understand and respect that this is a very rare and special thing. Or if an ancestry is not rare and special, it's very common. I still feel like people are basically playing it as just a human. I'll even go so far as to say I feel a little weird sometimes about myself and other people playing even something like an elf. This is a almost ageless 900+ year old being. The way it thinks and acts and reacts and behaves would be so incredibly different from anything that we could ever possibly imagine. But people are like, +2 dex. Like that's, to me, you're doing the elf a disservice. An elf is not a human with pointed ears. An ancestry is not a person with a dog face. It is a whole thing with a very unique and, dare I say, alien way of viewing the world. And I think people do a great disservice when they play them and they pick them because they thought they were cute or because they thought they were badass or they thought they were cool. And I feel like in many ways it's underserved.
So do you dislike all the ancestries other than human because many people just kind of play them as a human with elf ears on?
Yes, that is actually true.
Okay,
there's Spock.
You dislike Leshy's more than the other ancestries.
Okay, so I will say this: Leshy's are not my least favorite ancestry. So there's that. Poppets may be number 1.
Okay, well, let's see. We got a list here. Okay, let's write this out. Okay, we'll put in
Poppets, Leshy, Sprite.
Poppet, Leshy,
Sprite. The other ones, I think like some people.
Well, they had Gripply. Those are the frog people.
Pretty cute.
And do you want to put in Luis Loza's Rabbit Folk? Are you familiar with those?
I am not, but I mean, I can guess what they are.
I haven't seen all the art, but I've seen some of it. I mean, they're an animal folk, and there's like
there's a million animal folk.
I don't think we want.
Well, we could do rat folk. I do like rat folk, the Yusoki, or is there another one you could think of?
There's a lot of animal folk.
I know there's too many animal folk.
So that's a separate whole conversation.
Okay,
I agree with you there. There are just too many.
Gamayan. There we go.
So
there we go. Poppet, Leshy, Sprite, Gripply, and Gamayan. Gamayan are the parrot people. There's one on the. It's right next to you. It's next to you, Derek. Look, he's saying hi to you. Look. All right. He's like right there. He's saying hi.
I definitely can see him. Okay. All right. So my number one. So my least offensive of this list is actually going to be Sprite.
Okay.
I actually respect that. I think that is a cool, unique way. They aren't just people. They're these fey creatures with wings, and they have a different outlook on life. I think that, and I think a lot of people, in my experience, will play that up because I think we have this strong cultural connotation of what a sprite is, and I think most people will sort of play that up. I may not necessarily like the way you play it, but I think you'll at least make an attempt to play it. And I don't think that they are necessarily cute. They might be like spectral and magical, but they aren't necessarily cute. So Sprite would be my favorite of that list. My second would be the Gripply, and that's just because frog locks from EverQuest have a strong place in my heart, and I can't help but deny that. But they are essentially dumb frog people that should theoretically be a lot like lizard people, but you know, they are what they are. But again, we go, oh, it's a frog person. What does that mean? How does one play as a frog person? And then people will assign cultural stereotypes to a frog person, but then you say to yourself, but does that make sense? I thought we were trying to move away from cultural stereotypes of what that means, you know? So what is that? How do you define that? I mean, an interesting take with that would be like the Gungans from episode 1, right? Like they're wide ranging people with a lot of different types, but what defines them is things like they're amphibious. So they live in the water, you know, like they have a sort of isolationist policy. Like these are things that make sense. And I think that people underserve. So that's number 2. All right. Now we're getting into the real stuff. Now you're making me really think here because it's Leshy, Gamayan, and Poppet, all right, here's what I'm going to do. I'm going to say Leshy, then Gamayan, and then my least favorite of this list is Poppet. So
Gamayan was really down there.
Wow.
Gamayan is really done there. Like I'm not trying to knock the mechanics or whatever.
Mark wrote the Gamayan.
That's great. That's amazing.
Ancestry. The Ancestry.
I didn't write the monster.
No, not the monster. Not the monster.
Okay, I have not read the Ancestry, but it's a parrot person. Like, I mean, I don't know.
They're so cute.
Yeah, and it's very cute. And that is just a huge negative.
They actually have, but their background, you'd like their background because it's dark and evil. It's actually a really interesting background. But
Poppet is by far my biggest offender because that is just nonsense. That's craziness.
You just know how to play a puppet? A cute puppet?
Here's the thing. I could see a world where a Poppet character would be so amazing and awesome if it was like this crazy central, like literally unique or rare. The fact though that it is an Ancestry boggles the imagination.
It's rare though. It is rare.
Tell that to anybody, Mark. Okay, tell that to the next Pathfinder party you see on Reddit that's made of like 3 Poppets and an android. Okay,
well, they chose to
I love
play
android
with things that were that rare. I mean, some groups play with rare things being rare, and some groups want to own exceptions to that. And I think that's a strength of the system too, just like the way you can dial the role play up and down. Right.
I completely agree with you because I mean, in fact, I see people actually complain sometimes because they say, "Oh, rare should be more powerful because it's rare," and I said, actually, I kind of like that it's not. It might be a little bit more mechanically compelling or whatever, but for the most part, it's not really saying that this is better. It's just saying it's
Derek, the creator of Gamayan who actually wrote them, is hissing at you in chat.
Oh, okay. I'm sorry. I'm sorry. Ooh, yes, I see it. Okay. Look, again, I'm sure the design on it is beautiful, but it's
How did you rate them again in your Knights of Last Call ranking?
He called them out. He called out the parrot people.
I don't know that they got an F. Maybe they got an F. I don't know.
You didn't like them.
I didn't like them.
Because your ranking system was like, it went from like fantastic to like,
I loved it.
As like the second one, and then a bad, and then terrible, and then even more terrible, or something like that.
Something like that.
Four of them sounded roughly negative.
No, it was like
the second one was meant to be pretty good.
I think Derek was attacked by a parrot in his youth, and he just is.
I grew up with parakeets. I mean, if that means anything.
Really?
Attacked by a radioactive parrot, and he secretly fights crime.
I think part of it is that I think and again, I don't know if this is like a cultural thing or if it's an anime thing. I don't really like anime either. One of my favorite lines, there's a book, it's a very obscure RPG called Free Market. It's by John Harper. It was a box set. It's like $600 on eBay because it's like impossible to find. But you basically play a functionally immortal infovore who lives on a space station around Saturn. Anyways, it's like a post-scarcity utopia RPG. It's really, really weird. But there's a passage in there where it said, hey, we can literally print bodies and then download our consciousnesses into them. are we going to have dog people and cat girls? And he went, no. They're like, what we've discovered is that when you make cat people or dog people, you don't get something that combines the best elements of people and dogs. You just get something that is crazy. And that part of my Gamayan downvote is I just find like the anamorphic ancestries to not be as compelling as something that is like even something like an elf, which to me, the compelling part of an elf, you're like, oh, it's just a human with pointy ears. Right. And I get why that's boring for a lot of people. But for me, the more compelling part is what would it be like to be functionally immortal? And by the way, for this reason, I mean, I'm playing one right now, but I don't think halflings are all that particularly interesting. I think the gnomes, especially the gnomes of Pathfinder 2, are far more compelling. I was going to say,
what non-human ancestry do you actually like?
I mean, I like elf. I think it's a very interesting concept of belief. It's changed a bit with versatile heritages, but I historically I thought the existence of the half elf and the half orc I always thought were really interesting, to sort of have two, to live in both worlds, to have this sort of like, it's almost like a Worf type thing where you have this Klingon sort of nature, but you have this human civilities. So I think the human is interesting. The elf is interesting. I think the gnome is interesting. Not as much maybe the halfling.
I like the gnome a lot, actually.
In the core ancestors,
I think the gnome is great.
In your top one.
Oh, that aren't in the
less Tolkien.
That are less Tolkien. Let me think about that.
I like half orc.
I mean, but that's in the core ancestry.
I know, that's core.
I'm going to Nethys. Hold on a sec. All right, here we go.
Do you like dragons? You guys still haven't done a review. I've been curious to see what you guys
we're so behind on reviews that we still need to do a Book of the Dead review.
It's acceptable for the answer to this to be no. I was asking.
I hate dragons.
It's okay. Let's see here.
Dragons are awesome.
Fetchling. That's interesting. Fetchling is interesting. Let's see. I'm not a fan of any of those. Not a fan of those. Yeah, of the uncommon ancestries currently available in Pathfinder 2, I would say that the Fetchling is kind of interesting. The Kitsune are pretty interesting. Let's see.
What about skeleton? Do you like skeleton?
I have a weird one of my problems with the Book of Dead, and I will do a review of this, is like I'm all for that really cool ancestries, but there's some weird things that they had to do for balance reasons that like create sort of a problematic parming where you're like, I'm a skeleton, but I still bleed, or like there's like some people were pointing out some of the
bleed bone marrow, Derek.
Yeah. I mean, at a certain point, it's like, look, if you're gonna make me a skeleton, if you're gonna let me play as a skeleton, just let me play as a skeleton.
Well, that's why there's a sidebar that says if you want it to be much more powerful than everyone else, or to remove like 33% of the conditions as a threat,
right?
Just let them do it, and maybe also have them die at 0 hit points if you want.
Correct.
So not very fun to die at 0 hit points like a Normal Undead, but you can do it.
But to take sort of a back step of it, this is something that I really like from Pathfinder 1, or more specifically from 3rd edition, was the idea of like the ECL and like how the ECL. And I know that was a messy system.
That was like one of the worst mechanics.
No, it wasn't implemented well, but the idea was still structurally sound, where instead of playing this watered down Minotaur that you have to strip all of the cool Minotaurness from it so that it makes sense as a level 1 character and suddenly looks and feels just like pretty much every other level 1 character, you say, no, a level 1 Minotaur is functionally a 5th level character. And yes, it had a lot of problems because of the way that mechanics work, but it meant that at least when you did get to play a Minotaur, you got to preserve that Minotaur experience. Because if there's one thing that I also don't really like about certain RPG games, and this is true of Pathfinder 2 as well, is like the idea that like, I don't know, like Mature Animal Companions is one example of this. You're like, oh, it's my little pet. And then like one day it's just large. And then the next day it's like savage, it can fly. And like, it's like one of those weird things where it's like, yeah, I'm a character who has wings, but I can't fly. But then some random day after a number of adventures, I can fly. It's like, there's a certain part of me that says, look, if you're going to make a character with wings, let him fly. Like, we joked that somebody just kind of as a troll in our Pathfinder 2 game right now is playing a Tengu. And like, there's a situation where like, there was a bunch of stuff that happened. Like, well, yeah, can't you fly? Like I had a fly spell on me, or if somebody else had an airwalk spell on them, and he goes, no, I can't fly. And it was like, you're a bird person. How does a bird person not fly? I don't know.
I think
game balance.
There are certain things that RPG systems need to think very carefully about, of whether they want to be able to put in certain thematic things that people want to do at a low level. And in order to do that, they need to design them in a different way. And it's something that no D20 system has taken the amount of sort of introspection to do, even Pathfinder 2nd edition. So for example, if you want flying to be a first level mechanic that is not so fundamentally busted that you just win and you have the rest of the party stay home and you win against maybe 75% of encounters that are not able to do anything to you if you have a longbow and you're flying from very far away and they're melee animals or something, then you could make a flying condition. You could have a game where instead of using 3D combat, you sort of have a flying condition that gives you some kind of a bonus against things that are on the ground, and they can still attack you, right? And you could define flying in a way that you could have it and it doesn't trivialize the game. But
right.
we wound up with pretty much every incarnation of D&D not doing that.
Right. I as you stated that, Mark, like the one thing I thought about was 4th edition. And in 4th edition, there were sort of two races of elves that the player's handbook, the core player's handbook.
The Eladrin that you can't put them in jail.
You got it. Eladrin is what they start the game with, the ability to do a 30-foot dimension door. And it's not once per day. It's essentially a focus spell in Pathfinder 2 terms, right? You can do it every 5 minutes. And that's a very but it's not something you earn your way into. It's just like, no, Eladrin are these magical elven beings who come from the Feywild. They can teleport. And it was kind of cool. And even maybe that was very functionally powerful, but even halflings had this halfling luck ability, but it wasn't a once a day ability. It was once a fight, twice a fight. If someone attacks you and hits you, you can say, no, I'm lucky, re-roll it. And it's just from the very beginning, mechanically, these races felt very different. And I always appreciated that. So, but anyways, so that's how I would rank them. Poppets are the worst, but
sprites, I wrote the one that's the best of the worst.
That's true. The sprites, actually, I would go so far as to say sprites, I think, actually are fine. I wouldn't even say they're the best of the worst. In fact, Monty Cook did a kind of variant D20 book called
the fans and the sprites with a Y.
You got it. Exactly. Yeah. Very good. The Lore Song Fane and the Windlings is what they became. And the Windling was essentially a sprite. They were tiny. They were, they could fly from level 1. And I always thought that was a really interesting race in Ancestry. So, man, Mark, you know your stuff.
Yeah. I think what they turn into is literally a sprite with the
yes,
Y. Lore Song and Quickling Fame.
Yeah, the Lore Song and the Quicklings. Yeah, they advance or kind of, but it's described in the end. It's not like some ancestry. They literally go into a metamorphosis. It's like they become a cocoon at a certain point, and then they emerge in their final form. And I think that's really interesting and cool. But again, from playing that game, it's what would that be like to be part of an ancestry or a race that literally goes through a biological metamorphosis that has this ability? And I think you would just see and perceive things very differently.
I think a lot of the Arcana Unearthed, Arcana Evolved sort of races did things like that, right? Weren't the Moj?
The Moja did that.
Turned themselves into dragons.
Yep. The Moja did it too. But I thought the races in Arcana Evolved were really awesome. The Varric were really cool. The Moja were really cool. Even the core race was giant. Was really cool. So
it was like Delin in Babylon 5.
Sure. Yes. Exactly.
See?
Exactly. When she comes back with no hair.
Right. No, she comes back with hair. She had no hair.
I'm sorry. Yeah. She starts with hair, and then she gets the human.
Right. She goes into the cocoon, and then she comes back, and then she looks.
And then she comes back with the hair.
Right.
Yeah.
She comes back with hair.
Right, the other way around.
Mm-hmm.
I actually have a really good picture somewhere of a couple of us because R.I.P. Mira Furlan, but at Gen Con a couple years back because we liked her and we liked Rousseau, and she was both those characters from Delin and Rousseau from Lost.
Yes, she was very good in Lost. Yeah, she died recently. It's kind of amazing.
Yeah, well,
she wasn't
I think it was a
couple years ago, but she was pretty young too.
Cheese of Ed just says, sad you left Dungeons off the cute list.
Yeah.
Dungeons would rank higher than Poppets. So
Dungeons are
would
cool.
they be below Command though?
Yeah, I think I like Dungeons more than Command.
Have you read the Dungeon Ancestry?
I did.
Okay, so you have the information to make that decision.
I do.
Wow,
I do.
there's a lot going on here. Yeah. So I hope everyone enjoyed the Derek Melinda hour.
Yeah, I'm sorry.
It's basically been Derek and Mark and me just watching, but that's fine. That's fine. We bring on people who are powerfully A-type personality guests who have
As Derek and I
strong
discussed, Steven ran
opinions.
to a door and opened it and sent monsters in.
You know
That's right.
what? You gotta stress test your games.
It
I
was his dog
cannot
in the end.
emphasize that enough. You cannot, you have to. Otherwise, you have things like Magic the Gathering in the early days, or there's lots of games. I mean, if you.
Yeah, it's just brutally successful games that have made
there
their
you
parent
go.
company hundreds, if not billions of dollars.
Do you have to actually test?
Ironically,
though,
them having the game
whether or
broken
not-
is what made it so successful.
I
You
agree.
have to test whether tournament Magic works if one of the two players is trying to kill themselves and lose. Do you have to?
Yes.
Like Steven,
Like, if they're doing the equivalent of you opening the door and losing, does it matter? Like, they've just lost, so it doesn't matter.
We didn't
what
lose.
The other person is doing.
No, we won. We all escaped.
Yeah,
we
you
just
won,
didn't
but
get-
you
we
paid
didn't get a
bunch of
lot
extra
of gold.
resurrection fees.
yeah,
We
we
didn't
won,
get as much gold.
We won the best prize that can be. We're no longer playing the game.
They loved it.
But to that point about Magic the Gathering and broken, have you ever considered the paradox, the Pathfinder 2 paradox, which is that this type of game with these type of options is the exact type of game that is likely to attract people who are attracted to games because they like to find ways to break the game.
Oh God, yes, definitely.
Yeah, I don't even think that's a paradox.
That's not a
just
paradox. That's what I
Yeah,
just
but-
said.
but-
The reason.
But are
fourth
they going to be
edition-
disappointed if you design the game well
Yes.
and you don't give them enough
Oh,
ways?
100%. 100%. In fact,
Yeah, they'll
I
say
know
that
for
it's a badly designed game when it's well designed.
yeah. No,
They
that's
will. Like, that's
100% true. If you design a game that doesn't have, I wouldn't call it. See, there's a subtle difference. There's ways to break the game, which I disagree. You shouldn't have ways to break the games, but there's ways to bend the game, and there's ways to get your advantages and ways to get like something out of the game, and to find the little nooks and crannies, and to, as you would
That's
theory
good.
craft. That's the word I'm looking for.
That's interesting. Right?
Well, the,
Right, which is
the
Could
theory
generally
craft, the
be
game.
that it's due to tactical play, thinking about how the pieces of the game work together, how your abilities work against the enemy's abilities, and how they can be used efficiently in combination with your allies. That should be the way that you find a way to bend out extra advantages,
Yes.
not that you just found something that was written that was so overpowered.
Yeah, that's like-
that. Obviously, if you take that, you're just stronger than everyone
Right. I
else.
think about chess.
AKA the gnomish flick mace.
Yeah, it's exactly. But think about chess. Chess is like, what considered one of the most balanced games, and that it's pure strategy, and that it's
Correct.
but imagine it'd be like, well, but on Mondays the pawn does this and acts like a queen,
I
but
still
only
think
on
the queen
Mondays.
is a little overpowered in chess. In
But you know what I
shogi,
mean. The
with
point
pieces
is, it's
being
like-
a little less powerful.
Right, but the point is
can do
the
more
the
things.
strategy goes towards playing the game well and not figuring out how to break
But
the
it doesn't
game.
stop people from learning opening strategies and committing to that type of thing. So
Mhm.
it's an interesting comparison, but it's just interesting to me that like the type of player, I mean, generally speaking, Mark, you said this, I think, really well when you said you were talking about one of the main design differences between 5th edition, which is 5th edition said, how can we lower complexity and get as much depth out of it as possible? Whereas Pathfinder 2 said, okay, we want a very deep game. How deep can we go without making the game overly complex? But we are willing to pay the price of an increasingly complex game. And I think that kind of ecosystem, that kind of architecture is naturally going to draw in these people, the type of people who get to level 99 in Final Fantasy, who get every single item, who go in and in one shot the final boss. And it's interesting to me because they're attracted to this game. But in my personal experience from playing it, sure, there are, things that work particularly well together. Oh, it's a sorcerer and they took paladin and, dedication and champion dedication. Now they're in full plate and it's all, and they got lay in hands. It's really nice.
Well, I would say
So I think that we need to split it apart, though, Derek.
it's, I was
Because
just saying,
people get to level 99 in Final Fantasy are one type of player. They're not the same as the ones that you think you were talking about, which are the ones that realize that in Final Fantasy 6, if you use Vanish and all your physical attacks can't work, but your magic attacks always work, and then you use the X Zone spell, which most bosses are supposed to be immune to, they will just be killed. And it will ignore things. Or that in some Final Fantasies, bosses with the second form, turning into their second form was a triggered reaction that happened to your attacks. So
Sure.
if you killed them with the reflected spell off of the reflect, they never entered their second form and the fight just ended.
Well,
Those players
that's more like a bug.
Yeah, but players who want to do things, that's what I'm talking about. The players who want to find the broken combos, want to find Vanish X Zone, they don't want to get to level 99. That's actually, they kind of would look down on the players who get to level 99. That's just pure numbers. That's not them finding a mistake that you made and then using it to win when they are actually lower level. There's some people who beat Final Fantasy 9 and they actually petrify all of the enemies so they don't get any XP. The bosses don't give it. And they try to do a level 1 run.
That's nice.
And so I think there are different types of players. And there's the power by just getting the numbers up, and there's the power by like finding some cheesy combo that's different.
I guess what I'm trying to say is, and you're well aware of this, is like, it doesn't matter how many books you look through. It doesn't matter how many feats you look through. It doesn't matter whatever you look through. Your level 5 fighter, okay, is going to have a plus 16 to hit. Like, that's just like at most, right? Short of, you know, having a plus like 2 or 3 weapon. There's no combination of classes or feats or abilities that's ever going to let you have a higher bonus than plus 16. And if you make the assumption that all players are going to play now, and of course the game
might have a 17 with the mutagen.
Okay. That's a status bonus though, right? Or a temporary
an item bonus.
Okay, item bonus. I'm talking
by one.
I'm talking about
might theoretically, but
right. I'm talking about permanent. Yeah, obviously, like, you have a heroism spell cast on me, and now I have
on
a plus
your own, on your own, without any kind of weird archetype that you took or something else like that.
But even then, I'm saying, like, even if I took the best, it's going to be plus 16. And the knowledge out there that, assuming that other players are playing the same as me, that if I go and look at their fighter, it's going to have a plus 16 to hit, and I'm going to go look at their fighter, it's going to have a plus 16 to hit.
Yeah.
And I wonder if there's a certain frustration that mounts in players who go, I'm investing more into this game. I'm better at this game than Steven or Mark. I should have there should be a way for me to have a plus 17. And to your point, Mark, there is, but you have to like actually play the game, and you have to like engage with it.
You're right about that type of player. And those are the type of players who are in favor of what is sometimes called ivory tower game design that was intentionally put into 3rd edition of D&D.
Correct.
Of let's put trap feats.
Yep.
Let's put things that are better for people to find. Yep. So that they can feel superior to players who take the trap feats.
Do you feel that all class feats are equivalent in Pathfinder 2?
I feel that it is an ideal of Pathfinder 2nd edition to make it so that none of them is the kind of feat that pushes you over the edge like that. That would be like, oh yeah, I have plus 17. I talked about it in the interview with the rules lawyer and in the Arcade Mark What If, which is there was a really, really early brainstorming stage where a small proof of concept was created for a system where everything was feats, including the fighter getting higher proficiency. And it was a problem. It was really bad because nobody knew at the time, or sorry, the game designers did, but not experienced players didn't know that number was like because it's not like the most attractive, sexiest thing you can take, but is actually extremely powerful. So it's sort of, I called it in the rules lawyer interview, the anti-holy grail of game design, something that is enormously powerful and feels boring and bad.
Right. We talked before about an option that seems really good, but it is really boring to actually play, versus an option that's really fun to play, but isn't actually very mechanically good. There's definitely a lot of spells and certain items where you look at it and you go, well, this probably isn't actually mechanically that good, but it's a lot of fun and you might take it anyways.
So in TF2, it's designed to make sure there aren't any of those that are like a secret math booster that just makes you better than everyone else. And so therefore, the difference, because there's always going to be variance, and there's always going to be variance. So the difference between you taking a feat that gives you an option that is a new option but doesn't raise your maximum amount that you can use like 70% of the time versus 40% of the time, except maybe the one with 40% of the time overlaps less with this other feat you have that you can use 60% of the time that are mutually exclusive. And so the idea is that the effect is lessened of the difference between what you took, due to the fact that there isn't a way that you're just like racing to like my Pathfinder 1st edition character who had like 40 spell DC in Pathfinder 1st edition, and they either rolled a natural 20 or they failed the save.
So actually, let's wrap it up. It's been 2 hours. I know you have to go forever. And quite frankly, this is a good topic. I can have a topic next week. Is playing a broken game more fun than a balanced game?
That's a good question, and I don't have an immediate answer. But,
yeah, but it's funny because I would
the one we were talking about before about like the psychology of game design
that
and
too.
the difference
Psychology.
between two different things that are effectively the same mechanically.
Yeah, we got a couple good topics
love it
now.
Or hate it depending on how you.
So we have a couple of good topics, but I would say to wrap this section up is that D&D 4th edition tried to do this and failed until the end when they revamped it. By then it was too late, and I remember that was a big thing. Everyone's like, "Oh, every class feels the same."
Hasbro's expectations for them,
but every class felt the same because everything. All the mechanics were the same.
Decently popular. It just wasn't as.
Oh no, I know, but I'm talking about
playing 4E, but it was.
I played 4E a lot.
I played a lot of 4E.
I
played a lot of 4E.
And Fallen Empires was another example of everything was perfectly balanced and everyone hated it. And you can even look at the Matrix. Remember, they're like, "Oh yeah, we made the first Matrix. It was a paradise."
Right, and people rejected
everyone died. Right. It's like people want to be miserable. People want imbalance.
Right, but if you give too much imbalance, then you end up with trap feeds.
Right.
And you end up with,
But I'm about to say, and then we can talk about this next time. Pathfinder 2nd Edition, I think, has somehow hit that holy grail of. It's very well balanced in that you can't get above that plus 16 or plus 17. You just can't. Doesn't matter what you do. Doesn't matter how hard you try. If you're playing within the rules, it is impossible. You just can't do it.
Right.
But there's so many other cool things that you can do, and there's so many different options and ways to build characters that you can still have an interesting party without having to min-max. You can still have an interesting character.
What kinds of abilities to get.
Right.
That's how we did it. It's not even a secret.
Yeah, but you know what I mean? It's like, but people who aren't into game design might not understand why this works. And that's actually why it works, is that it's like they put in very hard ceilings that you just can't bust through, that you can very easily in Pathfinder 1, but it's pretty much impossible to burst through those ceilings in Pathfinder 2. It's just designed that way that there's certain things you cannot break through.
Right.
But they gave you so many cool other options that you're distracted.
I have some thoughts on that, but I'll save that.
Yeah, save that for next time. But they're distracted by it. They're like, "Oh, look at all these pretty lights over here." It's like I can't like get that plus 17, but look at all these other cool things over here I can do, and
I
it
can
works.
Throw my ally, and then he gets to make an attack.
Yeah, or I can take my arm off and use my arm for reach and attack him up a skeleton. That's a cool one.
You know what the first thing that someone said? They're like, "Can you imagine this with a flick mace?" That was like the first thing that people said.
Flick maces don't work in the world of Alucard. That's all I'm saying.
So we in Northern Reaches, which is the Knights of Last Call Patreon continuous. It's like an MMO TTRPG, right?
Guest subscriber, yay!
Yeah, we have a MMO TTRPG. The only rule is no flick maces are banned.
There you go. that's the rule. Thank you for subscribing. You can use your cool little chat icons, and if you guys have ideas for chat icons, because
people still use Ask Coil or whatever the other one is that's D6 reach one-handed, Derek.
I haven't seen
I don't even know that weapon, but
it's a martial. It's a martial weapon. It's a D6.
Is it a flail one-handed reach weapon?
Yeah, I think so.
Well, then
banned.
Banned. I missed that one.
Well, everyone. So you are starting a new after you TPK'd your cash cow. I mean your adventure path. Good job.
It's actually a sword, Derek.
Good job, Derek.
Flail, so maybe it's okay.
You're starting a new adventure. This actually is a pretty good one because I don't see a lot of people doing Quest for the Frozen Flame. Yeah, I don't see anyone really running that one.
And what attracted me to it,
and it's cool. Cool.
What attracted me to it was honestly three things. Some of which are good for me as a YouTube content creator, but some of them are good for me as a GM. The first is it's a 1 to 10 campaign.
Yes.
And I know that high level works in Pathfinder 2. I've seen it work on our community games. I'm sure it really well. It's still not my type of D&D.
Mm-hmm.
That's just my not play. I like when players start getting teleports and plane shifts and resurrections. I'm like, okay, let's wrap it up.
Fortunately, those are all uncommon, so you can just not allow them. Anyway.
I mean, technically, Mark, I can make anything that's not common.
Sure, but by the default, you have to specifically allow teleport.
But even that, I play superhero games for superheroes. I don't play fantasy RPGs for superheroes. So even something like when people start flying around all the time, it's a little wonky for me. So, anyways, I like that it's 1 to 10. That's number one. Number two, I do like the exploration elements. They have some leadership elements to it, which I think are really fun and really exciting. And the third thing, which I really want to lean into, and this is a role playing thing in the traditional sense. I think this is not something that I would defaultly play. I tend to play games that are like, you're a group of wandering mercenary, murder, hobo, adventurer, kind of scum of the earth, go from town to town, you solve problems, like Kane from Kung Fu. This is a very different set of circumstances. This is a very different and unique culture that I would not really want or normally would play in. And as part of that, and to be fair, because it's Pathfinder, the player's guide goes into great lengths to talk about why and how you could play any ancestry with any class and still play in this realm of the Mammoth Lords based game. That is not the case in my game. My players have strict instructions about what they can and can't be. I am not going to have this hugely cosmopolitan adventuring party, despite the fact that the Adventure Path tries to do it because it's Pathfinder.
You're not going to have a Shuni who's from like halfway across the world in an extremely rare
they are allowed
that would have never shown up there.
You got it. In fact, the party is allowed to have one non-Kellid human. It's like everybody else has to be a Kellid human.
Okay.
Because
they can't even be a Pine Leshy. Those actually are common around that area.
No.
So this would be perfect for use the monster part system. I'm telling you right now.
So this is okay.
Some people have been talking about the monster part system.
They have
specifically for this because you can kill.
Talking about,
and let me tell you,
like on the message.
It's really fun.
Yes, we have heard this from both our patrons as well as from people in YouTube who said, "So what are you going to do with magical items?" And like one of our default assumptions was to do like automatic bonus progression. These are not like they don't even have access. There's like one city in all of the realm of Mammoth Lords, so there's not like a place to go shopping and trade your gold. And these are people who aren't interested in gold and trinket, right? Like it's very much a First Nations type people.
Not only one city, but also it strictly would be breaking the plot for you to allow them to get to that city before the point where you're supposed to go there.
That being said, when I run APs, normally I take the plot and I just throw it away, and I just use like the ideas and the suggestions. But that being said, it is being very strongly considered that we may use a monster part system.
Because if you have any questions,
because the animism primary religion of the realm, of the people of the realm, that sort of spiritual essence that every animal has a spirit and a guidance. You could really see, and it adds an extra level because there's a lot of animal encounters in this AP. And the idea that like the group could hunt a moose and bring it down and not only use it for food and for its hide for the good of the tribe, but the idea that the spiritual essence of the moose, that, those antlers could be forged into some sort of, parts that would give a functionally equivalent to a magical item, which these Pathfinder 2 characters do need in order to sort of succeed, does have a very strong appeal. And so,
I will say, just to interrupt real quick, if you haven't done it yet, and I've played a couple games with monster parts, of course, it transforms the PCs because for the first time ever, instead of them just getting weapons and armor and that's it, it's like, what do you have? Your +2 sword, your +1 sword, your armor. There's stories behind everything. And it sounds like something you would really like, Derek. I'm actually not even trying to upsell it to you. I'm just saying when I played it.
Has it.
We already own it. So.
Right, no, but you know what I mean? Not like upselling for the game. It's like when they then kill the mammoth and then they make their armor out of it and then they name it. Like it adds a dimensionality that I've actually not seen in role playing where people really get attached to their equipment and then they name it and then everyone has a different type of weapon. Everyone has a different type of armor. It's not just, what are you wearing? All four of you could be wearing leather armor. It's not leather armor. One of you is wearing mammoth leather armor.
Sure.
One of you is wearing whatever, it's like
speaking of mooses,
moose leather armor, it's really interesting.
Derek, have you nerfed the Wheel of Pain for your new game? Because there's a very real chance that if that Wheel of Pain is still there, that they're going to wipe in the first encounter.
Yeah, so the first encounter is pretty brutal. Spoiler alert. But so one of the big takeaways, so to Steven's point earlier about killing our cash cow, our AP became somewhat famous for these wheels that chat could chat to. And to Steven's point about grieving, we had people who spent a lot of money to give the players hero points. We have spent a lot of money. We are getting rid of all that. So we are basically back. Long story short, if I could be honest with you, our Patreon's pretty large. It supports us. They give us a fair amount of money each month. And they told us after the end of the adventure path, they said, hey, this is important to us. And we want to see you guys continue to play. that alone is enough financial incentive for me to run the game, even without any sort of additional, component to it. We are still going to try to figure out a fun way to allow audience participation and engagement. But for the most part,
there's a lot of ways.
The other big change is the person who used to be our producer, who ran all that wheel stuff behind the scenes, is now a player in our game.
I'll give you something that you can do pretty easily.
So the wheel person is like, well, now that I have to play
wait.
want that wheel.
You know what? You do a good one is that one of the big things is you name your equipment. If you do use monster parts, you can have people naming the equipment for the characters.
Yeah, I think as long as it's not something
mechanical, not like Bodie McBoatface, right? But but you actually
getting back to the role play topic.
Yeah,
they have to do it in character.
Yeah, no, it's actually everyone names, like when I played it. Like people get goggles, they name the goggles. They get the hat. Everything gets named, and suddenly it's this whole new dimension. It's great. I mean, I know we wrote it and designed it and all that. No, but it's really fun.
No, I think
fun to use.
In this particular instance, it really does make sense. These characters believe in the inherent power and spiritual nature of living beings. That everything has, to quote Pocahontas, right? Every rock and tree and creature has a life, has a spirit, has a name.
So wait, when are you doing your episode 0? Is that tonight?
Yeah, so session 0 is tonight, 7 p.m. Eastern at the Ninth Channel. And we're going to be running Pathfinder 2 games every other week on Tuesdays at 7 p.m. And we're doing this in the hopes that on the off weeks, we might play some other RPGs to showcase Legend of the Five Rings, Dungeon World, Blades in the Dark.
You do it all online or you do it in person?
Yeah, so this is still going to be played online because, quite frankly, Pathfinder 2 players, they want to see the nitty gritty. They want to see the dice rolls. They want to see a very accurate battle mat. And Foundry, which we have invested very heavily into, quite frankly, does that for us way better than even our extensive Dwarven Forge and custom table setup could ever do. And so being on Foundry allows us to let everybody can see the bonuses. I can even share the stats with the chat of a monster. So they can know its armor class, its reflex save. Its
if you ever need guest NPCs, let us know.
Yeah, we'll do.
We'll come in and we'll kill everyone. I will. I can kill everyone. Mark will be nice. Just
pull multiple encounters.
Hey man, I only play someone. I'm. All I know is there's not a lot of people who can GM me. And not loose sand points. But Mark will be one of them. Mark could definitely GM me, no problem.
Listen, you saw how much he shut you down with that whole infamy.
Oh, I know.
Thing.
I've played. Trust me, we have run and played games at PaizoCons, and we have left GMs just crying. I mean, they just don't even know what's going on. They lose control of those tables so quick.
I'm preparing to just have Steven's character get arrested. It'll be fine.
Well, it's not just me. It's not me. It's you had me.
You think Vanessa and
you had all those
and
people
Linda
together.
Are all going to be little U's?
Yes.
At the table.
Yes, I'm actually going to coach them beforehand, and I'm going to tell them how to play, and we're going to all come in.
$200 stolen from them, which apparently has happened at every table that you've ever played in. Supposedly,
I have not only that. Not the $200, but the killing in cold blood. All 3 of my podcasts,
That's
3.
What you were talking about.
Oh no, it was just the cold blood. We just right in the middle of talking, one of the characters was
okay, I can easily believe that.
Yeah. Not the $200 part.
That there've been out of character thefts at all of your games.
Some actually we did have one of this was D&D first edition. Chris and Bob robbed Chris without his knowledge behind the scenes. They then did
of character.
What? No, in character.
Okay, that's in character.
Oh, you're talking about out of character. You rob people.
That was the whole setup for my trying to figure out if
we've robbed each other. Yeah, sure, we've robbed each other. No one knows. But if you,
me in character.
Dude, if you successfully robbed them, they wouldn't know.
Right. That's right.
See,
that's right.
So I've robbed many people, and none of them have ever found out.
That's
in fact, Mark, when I see you in 2 weeks, watch your wallet. That's all I'm saying.
That's what I already said. I'm not going to bring any money in my wallet now.
Well, he's going to be like, didn't I have a gift card to Cozy. Where'd that go, Linda? Where'd my gift card go? Steve.
happened to
And then
my
cut
card
to
for,
Steve.
like, my
One
checking
Cozy
account?
sandwich, please, on my punched gift card. That's all I need. It doesn't have to have monetary value. It just needs to have sentimental value.
There you go.
As long as I can take one of those. But it sounds like an interesting game.
Yeah, it'll be fun. We're not Critical Role, but we have if that's what you're looking for, I think we play a little bit more what I would call traditionally.
I have no idea what that means, but we'll find out soon.
We're just a bunch of people sitting around just having fun. Like we're not trying to oversell it. We're not trying to act. We're not trying to, we are role playing. We're trying to make things fun. But we're playing the game. We enjoy the challenge of overcoming. We like nonlinear problem solving. We like using the mechanics within the intention of the scope of the intention that they were designed to overcome challenges. And we make jokes. We make laughs. It's not always. We don't take ourselves too seriously, and we're also not professional trained voice actors. But we have fun. We have a fun time with it. So that's the most important.
So we'll have that, and then next week we have some topics. Quickly write them down, Mark, before we forget. Write them in the chat.
We have several topics.
I know, write them down because
week.
I'll forget by next week, and then I'll be like, what's our topic again?
After that will be like right before PaizoCon. Hey, we have 69 likes. That's actually a lot.
70
during the middle of the
70 likes. And then PaizoCon, Nonat will be there. I'll do stuff with him. I'm gonna probably just bring you could just do this from your iPhone. I'll just bring my iPhone and just start broadcast and show you guys what PaizoCon's like.
I thought I was gonna have to do a live stream from the cruise ship, but people didn't reach that goal. They blissfully left me $10 short of that goal so that I didn't have to go live.
If I knew that, I would have given you $10.
There you go.
Cruise ship Wi-Fi sucks.
It does. But we could have gotten like 480 or something, something bad.
I guess it's better now. Oh, we didn't even ask you about that cruise. That'll be next time.
That'll be next time. Yeah.
Even the iconic griefer.
Always a pleasure, boys. So, feel free to let me know.
I'm not iconic griefing. Stress testing. There's a big difference.
So is that why you would give him the $10 to make him do the cruise ship internet?
Stress testing the internet. I want to see if he can stream from the high seas.
Steven is that classic person who plays role-playing games because he just wants to see what's going to happen, and he's not
exactly.
He's not. He's not.
And I'm not going the safe path,
right? Because
right.
Well,
how many of my characters have been thrown in jail?
Right. It's something that Tracy Hickman told me at a seminar many, many, many years ago, which I'm sure people have heard this a million times, but run and play your character like you're driving a stolen car.
I love that. Great.
and the same way that you would treat look, we all know, even if it's not stolen, like if you get a rental car, everybody knows that you take those turns a little tighter, you grind those brakes a little bit harder because it's not your car. This is a stolen car. So number one, you don't care about it. Number two, you intend to be out of it by the end of the evening, right? So play your characters the same way. I think you'll have a lot more fun.
How you drive a rental car, Derek?
I didn't know that.
Because you're worried that they're gonna find you an extra fee.
No. I'm saying like, on my car, I'm like, I'm mindful of the fact that every bit of wear and tear I put on the car is going to cost me at some
Derek,
point.
are you one of those? Do you clean the car out when you return it? Let them clean it.
Yeah, I'll take up the big stuff, but I'm not going to go in there and vacuum it up or anything like that.
Oh, well, okay, but you at least take out the garbage.
Yeah, no, yeah.
Okay. I got some stories. I got some stories from college.
I am being conscientious of the parking attendants who work at the Enterprise or the Hertz rather than actually caring about like the actual company itself.
Well,
but,
if anyone comes to PaizoCon, you could ask me, and I will tell you stories of my college days of us renting cars, people going out getting pretty drunk, and then things happening in those cars, and then thank God I wasn't the one returning them. I'll leave it at that.
Right. Yeah, nothing so horrible as that. But yeah,
it's pretty horrible.
There's certainly an element of a player who plays role playing games just because they don't want to take stupid and unnecessary risks in their real life.
Of course.
Let me take them in this pretend one.
Yes, that's exactly right. The same way. How often are you playing like video games? And everyone in video games does crazy things. So why is it? I think it's because there's the social aspect of it. I mean, we're gonna start up again, but
Yeah,
it's like
Starting a whole
I know
other
we can't keep
topic now.
going, but yeah,
Some
that's
people are methodical in games too.
I know some people are methodical. I'm actually one of those. That's actually one of the 4 types. There's the griefer, there's the helper, there's the completist, and I forget what the last one is. I think it's the completist is the one who wants to see everything.
It's always different. There's tons of different breakdowns.
No, there's the 4. There's the classic 4. At least in there's
for
the
video games.
For video games, there's the classic 4.
And 5s.
And
I've seen a lot of 5s. Yeah,
I've seen what the I forgot what the 4th one was, but yeah. Anyhow, you gotta prepare for the griefer though. It's like it's and people don't want to think about it. And
I'm
people
preparing for the griefer now.
Oh.
I'll be ready by Paizo's
Mark's
time.
like, well, now I am. I wasn't going to be prepared for the griefer, but thank God Steve told me that story. I'm chaotic neutral. Yes, I am. People play chaotic. They don't play chaotic. They think
Correct.
They play chaotic. I play chaotic.
You are correct, and you are correct.
I play chaotic to like even the people who run the game are like, what is going on? I'm like, that's right. Welcome to the world of chaotic.
If you aren't saying, if you aren't saying wild card bitches and cut the brake lines and then roll out, you're not chaotic neutral, right?
You're right. You're right. Yeah. But here's the thing. I'm chaotic within the game. I never actually try to break the game.
Right.
Unless to find rule that's actually true stress testing. Yeah, that's true stress testing. But but like I'm never like, oh, okay, I'm gonna like take 4 actions this round instead of 3. No, I mean I don't do stuff like that. Right. I still play by the rules of the game.
Still play by the rules, right?
Yes. So I'm
all right.
Okay,
I'm only chaotic there.
Now that we know that Steven is chaotic, I think that's a good place to stop, and we've got multiple topics that we
multiple
can do.
topics and lots coming up.
If you're gonna be on later, if you want more fun, I'll see you guys on my channel. But also, if you are interested in checking out, we have a library of other interesting videos and live streams to watch. So
yes, they have a plethora.
Even later than
plethora.
That's true.
That's right.
Yeah, and then when you're done watching us make characters, if you want to watch Mark, you can go to Arcane Mark and you can watch that.
That's right. And you're doing Book of the Dead more, right?
Yeah, we're doing Book of the Dead. We're going to start the Grim Crypt. We finished with the Undead Architects.
There's a lot in that book. Are you going to do the adventure too?
We're not going to do the
preview. I like that book a lot.
Yeah,
there's a lot of good things about Book of the Dead, and
that's,
we're doing our biased review. We're not going to spoil the adventure, Stephen. We'll briefly talk about it at the probably in the same episode that we do the Lands of the Dead. So most of our remaining episodes are going to be the Grim Crypt.
Yeah, the design of that book
a big crypt.
Is very close to the way we do Battles of Books, because they do like a lot of little aspects. They don't like hit one thing. They siloed it really interesting. And I've talked to Eric Bone about that. Like I like when they design the books. The Starfinder books are designed like this, and now I like that they started to do it with the Pathfinder books, is that you give a little bit of everything instead of it all being one ancestor or all one monsters or something. I like how they broke it up into like, here's a ton of things for lots of methods and lots of... You
realize that Battles of Ancestry Dragons is kind of all one ancestry.
No, but we also have the lore. We broke up half that book for lore and other interesting rules. And but this way, we could have kept going. We did have to stop. Yeah. Otherwise, we could have added another 100 pages to that book.
That would have done some things.
Well, we would have never gotten it out on time. Instead, we'll just do another book later on, and there you go. Then you'll get more dragons. We'll do that later.
Awesome.
All right.
All right.
Bye, everybody.
Thanks, everybody.
Thanks, everyone. Thanks for joining.